Good afternoon, fellow citizens. Welcome to the Citizens Chat Show. This is where we meet and discuss, share ideas around the civil and political issues in the country. My name is Masesa Demiano, and this week we have two events that are going to happen and are historical in nature. Of course, we have the Constitutional Day, marking the 26 years of the Constitution today, but also tomorrow we have the independence, 59 years of independence of Uganda. So our discussion today will be 59 years of independence and the 26 years of the Constitution of Uganda. Have we made any progress? Joined on the panel today is a team of, at least for the first time, I have more legal people, and they've been around engaging in these spaces, and we need to see what they pick from this. On the panel, right away, I need to start off with Edgar Tabaro. He's a lawyer, but also I think a regional political analyst. You love calling yourself a regional politician.
Yeah, I play my politics in the Super League.
In the Super League. Welcome, Tabaro. This is your second appearance on this show. Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah. Then after Tabaro is Sarah Bireete, a lawyer also, a regular panelist, and also the executive director with the Center for Constitutional Governance. Sarah, you're welcome.
Good afternoon, viewers.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah.
You didn't say she's extremely smart.
Hey,
Yes.
Okay, it's a good compliment
coming from a
fair
woman,
lady.
of
Yes,
course.
you.
thank you.
Not
Tabaro,
Tabaro.
you didn't see that?
No, Tabaro's eyes are somewhere.
I actually think she's smarter because she's dressed in sober colors, just like I am.
And also from Sarah, we have Monicah Amoding. She's a feminist, gender activist or feminist, but also an entrepreneur and a lawyer too, and a former woman MP of Komi.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Monicah,
Yes,
you're
good
welcome.
afternoon, and thank you for having me here again. It's a pleasure.
You're regular.
Now a regular.
Yes.
Okay.
And of course, I will be joined by a fourth person that I will introduce as he joins in. But right into the discussion, I think I will need to start with Edgar, since you're close here. And being you're a regional person, we need to pick your mind on these issues. How would you describe Uganda's independence journey?
Top class. It's not been much remarkably different from what we have in other countries. And I'm informed by a treatise that was written by Martin Meredith, The State of Africa. The book gives a bird's eye view of the continent of Africa. And in some cases, it does a mapping of where we are at as a continent. If you're to compare Uganda to other African countries, I think we've done, even in our darkest hours, even with the pygmies, there are those who are shorter than the other. If we all be pygmies in Africa, Uganda has performed a little taller than many of its contemporaries. The depth of the subject of independence. Immediate post-independent Uganda was very promising. But then we lost direction at some point. Then we had military administration between 71 and 79. Then we had unstable government, 79, 1980. In the aftermath of, or during the life of the unstable government, the immediate post-Idi Amin government, we had the president ruling for 68 days, another one coming in for 10 months. Then you had the coup d'etat executed by Paulo Muanga and Yoweri Museveni. Although initially Museveni was not part of it, but they happened to have been in Dar es Salaam when Owito Joko and company moved in. And the word I have from those who were with him in Dar es Salaam, Nyerere dispatched Museveni on a fact-finding mission so as to go and report back to Mzee Nyerere about what was happening. When he came here, I think he got too comfortable and forgot the mission that he had been sent to come and do. He joined the coup for his own agenda. Now, during that time, we had elections. And if you asked for my opinion, I was very young. I hadn't even started school. If you asked for my opinion now, I would say it was wrong to hold elections in that atmosphere. 1980. It was wrong. The country was emerging out of civil war. It was emerging out of total breakdown of the state. Uganda was a pariah. Uganda was excluded from many of the UN activities because there were sanctions on the country. Actually, if you go to the history of treaty making, there are many treaties Uganda misses out during that period because we had been excluded from attendance of such international meetings. Then, 1981, we had a civil war. The major protagonist at the time being Yoweri Museveni. 85, a coup d'etat. Kampala, the city that we know, the old city of Kampala, was under the jurisdiction of 5 different warlords. Kampala, we are shooting from Ntinda right now. Between Ntinda and, say, Ruwaga, if you're Catholic and you're going to pray at Ruwaga Cathedral, you would drive through 4 different armies. We had Uganda National Rescue Front of Moses Ali. We had Uganda, we had FEDEM of Lieutenant Colonel Nkwanga. We had UFM of Dr. Andrew Lutakome Kaida. We had UNLA. Now the UNLA, the Acholi faction of UNLA. You know, I didn't mention that 1980 to 85 was factionalized in UNLA. We had the Acholi and we had the Langi. And that was one of the reasons for the coup d'etat in 1985. Now, at the time when the coup d'etat set in, there was a splinter faction in the DP, led by Tiberio Okenyi, Atwoma, Andrew Adimola, and many other Catholic DP. Then peace talks in Nairobi. We all know the results. 1986, Museveni takes charge. Now, the post-1986 state in Uganda, in particular the army, were comprised of many fighting forces. Those ones we are talking of, the Uganda National Rescue Front of Moses Ali.
About 14 of them.
14, actually, even many more came along the board. Because over the years, others emerged. We had Peter Tais, which was operating in your area. Peter Tai, Hitler Regu. Oh, Charles Sangina. Musa Chweru. These were rebels. These were rebels.
Yeah.
I met Charles Sangina when he was a second lieutenant.
In the rebel group.
Yeah, just imagine of the rebel group. He was.
There is also Western Nile.
No. This is UPA. This is from Muteso. Peter Tai.
I know.
Musa Chweru. Then there were many. There was
Northern part of the country.
Northern part of the country. There was the UPDM, Uganda Peoples Defense, the Uganda Peoples Democratic Movement, stroke A, of Charles Salai. They're all deceased. Eric Otemal Madi. The fighting wing was, I think, headed by Lieutenant Colonel Angelo Okello. Now, that
UPC?
also...
It was from the UPC?
No. Yes, but no. These are Acholi. These were Acholi who had escaped into Nimule and reorganized themselves and actually invaded in August 1986. It comprised of...
There's also the Western Nile Front.
that is another, I'm telling you, the formations. But the NRA, now the UPDF. is an amalgamation of
Of
all
all
those
that.
armies. And really considering our history and how the dynamics have blended over the years, I think we've done very well on that front.
But that is now UPDF because NRA.
You
It's
see,
the merge of NRA with these groups.
let's go process
is
by
what
process.
led-
Don't rush to the UPDF. UPDF is a creature of the Constitution, and we're still at 1986. When
You moved further.
when
You have now
UPDA
gone to
invades,
85.
invades, and I'd
96.
like to give context
Okay.
to that invasion of 1986. President Museveni went to Acholi in April 1986 and addressed a public rally at Peche Stadium. Now, the language of President Museveni was that of a victor talking to the vanquished.
Wow. That's fundamental.
Very fundamental in the politics of this country. It was that of a victor speaking to what? The vanquished. And he was very, I want to be as polite as possible because I'm talking about the head of state.
There is no tear gas around here.
Well, I don't fear tear gas, but remember, I'm a diplomat, so I'm supposed to talk in. I'm supposed to coach my language diplomatically. I deal in regional issues. But honestly, it was the language of a victor speaking to the vanquished. And in that rally, there were agents of the army that had been rooted out of Uganda, the UNLA. There are those who go ahead to say that the late Lieutenant General Basilio Lalo Kero was in that rally, disguised. And he was calling them all sorts of things: killers, backward elements. They should never have come in. That so and so should never have even touched a gun. This was a P3, you would drop, that kind of language. And so the actually elders, came to a conclusion that this was not a man to engage with, but rather fight. Now, they invaded in August 1986. And they caused mayhem. Uganda had just emerged out of civil war. Our coffee exports were, what was our collection? 44 billion tax. We're collecting 44 billion shillings
At
tax.
that time.
At that time. The tea industry had totally collapsed. The only export.
Because of the war. And who was responsible?
Well, over the years, the collapse. You see, Uganda has never recovered, by the way. We produced the highest exports of tea in 1972. And we have not even reached that position. 1972 was what? And are you aware Uganda produced more food than we are producing now in the 60s?
That's an indictment to the current team.
Well, I mean, I don't know how things have changed, but I mean, I'm putting it to the viewers that we really, really need to rethink. And I'm giving background to all this, because many of our viewers, you millennials, do not know these things. So, but there was a peace accord that was entered. I think it was in Addis Ababa with Eric Otema-Rimadi. Otema-Rimadi didn't come back immediately, but I remember Peter Lai was appointed Deputy Minister of Commerce in charge of barter trade. His work was to go and negotiate that we give you tea, we give you coffee, you give us transformers. But the economy had totally collapsed. Cotton, we're exporting nothing. Uganda was a supermarket of Kenyan produced goods. Uganda was purchasing goods from Rwanda. Kabale expanded into the city that it is today because of smuggling into Rwanda. So Rwanda was even much ahead of Uganda at that time. So then we have an amalgamation of all those forces. Then 1995, we enact a constitution that had been debated through a consultative process. A draft came out of a consultative process that involved election of the Constituent Assembly, directed elected members. Remember, in the previous constitutions, Parliament would constitute itself into a Constituent Assembly for purposes of what? Enacted. That's 66, then 67. So in this case, we had directly elected members who debated and amalgamated the Constitution. I remember the enactment of the Constitution in 1995, because there were two salient things that happened during that time. Justice Butera, now Justice Butera, was Chief Registrar. One day to passing the Constitution, the President appointed him DPP. Yet the role, the DPP could only be appointed with consent of, with approval of Parliament. So one day,
In the Constitution.
one day to passing the Constitution, he appointed
So
him.
he was
Had been
cheating
prepared.
the approval process.
Well, you'd use the word cheating, but there was
Did he go
reason.
through parliamentary approval?
He was shortchanging. No, a day before promulgation.
For the day before promulgation,
Oh,
he was
before,
chief. Yeah, he was chief registrar. He was in the judiciary, and he crossed to the what? Executive. He's now the deputy chief justice. Some of Museveni really takes time to focus, and does things not on impulse. And I'll leave it at that. I don't want
Then
to.
the reflection after
So
1986.
1995, we passed a new
Yes.
constitution. The euphoria that surrounded the enactment of that constitution was stunning. I happened to be from Fort Portal. It was the first time independence celebrations were held outside of Kampala. They were at Bomber Ground in Fort Portal. Justice Manyinda was the acting chief justice. He received a copy on behalf of the judiciary at the conference center as acting chief justice, and had to drive overnight, because at that time the road was narrow, to preside over the national celebrations as a what? As chief justice. At the same occasion, Melis Sinawi was the guest of honor, and indeed received a what? A medal on that day. Of course, the contrast between a constitutional state that Uganda was ushering in and Zenawi was not lost on some of us. Zenawi was an extreme dictator, comparable to the guy southwest of Uganda. So, but the euphoria that surrounded enactment of that constitution was stunning. Now, it's how many years later now?
26.
26 years after passing of the constitution. I joined university soon after that in 1996. And I recall the first test case to Nyefuza against Attorney General. My old man sat on the same court, and naturally we were all excited as a country. It made big news for some time. And the hope for Uganda as a constitutional state was you could touch it, you could feel it. It was not abstract. Now, 26 years later, that document of the time has been so mutilated that I can't recognize the original constitution.
Yeah, Edgar, right there, we are going to go deeper into the Constitution. I would want to also invite in Sarah to also give the perspective on what you think and how you describe our constitutional journey. 59 years later.
Maybe our independence journey will bring in the constitutional perspectives. Since before 86, Edgar ran through the military.
Yeah, because that's what has defined us as a country.
So when you start from the pre-independence, immediate pre-independence times, and the election of 1961, won by Ben Chwanuka, who was remembered just last week.
That was self-government, not
Yes.
independence.
Yeah, of course, the first election, I said immediate pre-independence. Yeah, so he came in as a first prime minister under that self-government of Uganda on March 1962. But of course, maybe he was there for 5 months. And then 1962, Kabaka Yeka politics and UPC, masterminded by the British, the colonial administrators who did not want a non-Anglican to take power, precisely Catholic. So that ushered in two elements, together with the constitution that led to independence, negotiated in the Lancaster Conference. That was mainly a constitution where politicians and the political elite negotiated their interests. and it was not bottom-up or a process that took care of the interests and aspirations of the people. So we had this alliance on the constitution, negotiation of, people have taken care of their interests. And then you have a political marriage of convenience, Kabaka Yeka UPC, just to shortchange the Catholics and the DP that they had visible majority then. And so that's how Ben Chwanuka loses the prime ministership to Obote. And then the ceremonial president, which was the very first constitutional amendment after independence, on celebration of the first anniversary when Sir Edward, the Kabaka was made the ceremonial president. Still out of the negotiations and that marriage of convenience. It did not last long. The disagreements happened, controversy, and then nobody decided to call for the referendum on the rest counties.
Decided to, it was...
Of course, the process of the referendum, which he supported. He supported it.
No,
of course, there were demands.
He had an obligation to do so.
There were, of course, but there was political support. It's like today, if you said that we are going for a referendum on bail, where would it be coming from? But it would still be a referendum. But on Buyaga and Uganda, there were demands of the people.
By the way, amongst the whole Poloi, the disadvantaged, the people have been marginalized and excluded. Outside we of the elites, there's big support for restrictions on bail.
Please, we shall conclude with that.
I'm telling you.
Let me first give the background.
We are going to get to it. I do not support the position, and I'll give you my reasons why.
No, we shall get to bail. We shall get to bail. Let me build on lost counties.
But it's popular.
And then, so the referendum happened, and the rest counties, voted to leave Uganda. So Sir Edward Mutesa, as president, had to sign acts of parliament letting go of what was the territory he had conquered. So that controversy deepened the disagreements.
There's an aspect that is often lost out, I'm sorry. During that referendum process in Bunyoro, Kabaka Edward Mutesa went to Ndaiga, and he was confronted by, were they market vendors or market goers? Sekabaka Mutesa shot 6 Banyoro dead on that occasion. Yes.
I'm hearing that for the first time.
Indeed, you're hearing it for the first time. He did so. You see, the history of this country has been written by people who want to paint Obote in the worst way possible.
No.
Maybe he was very bad, but not in the manner in which some of these people paint him.
Yes, of course they are always seen behind it. It's like how I was told that the coup, the Basilio, the general's coup, was also sparked with a gift of a puppy. But I will come to that story. I will come to that story.
Sarah, before you get in, I need to first welcome Ndugu Ochieno Joseph.
The indomitable.
Joseph
Ochieno.
Thank you for coming.
From Nagongera.
Actually, he's been on road, and he had to reach on time for the show. Thank you, Joseph, for being dedicated.
Do I look combat ready if I am a bearer? Yeah. I just saved it.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you.
So after
why I had to bring you in is because he hinted on Obote and he nodded. Sarah, you can go ahead.
But I hope you have not eaten into my minutes.
No, not.
Joseph, you're welcome.
Absolutely fantastic seeing all you guys.
Joseph is not in a combative mood today, as the age caught up with. He used to be much more combative, and that's the reason he went into exile in 1987.
Do you know what?
You have a story to tell us.
No. The conflicts, can I take back the conflicts that led to the attack on the Kabaka, then running into exile and the Uganda crisis. But after the Uganda crisis in 1966, then we had the amendment of the Constitution drafted by Benaisa Yes, drafted by
You'll be surprised.
Benaisa.
It was drafted by Benaisa, Nkambo Mugerwa, and a certain John Matovu. They are all deceased.
I've also
Yes.
had an opportunity of talking to the lady who was a clerk in Parliament. And after the politicians had agreed to what they wanted to cut out of the constitution, that they came to her with a ruler, this mathematics ruler. And then they would go article by article on kingdoms, cut it out. Article on this, cut it out.
That's
Article,
1967.
yes. Then they told her, take the copy with the cutouts to the printing and publishing company, tell them to print without the cutout.
Wow.
So that is also an
It's very
amazing
possible. It was
story.
done overnight.
Yes, that was how the
It was
amendments
done
were
overnight.
done.
But you see,
So-
just a
No,
quick,
no, no, but
quick
Edgar,
rejoinder.
really.
A quick rejoinder.
Okay.
Dr. Bote was insistent that they keep the constitution. And Benaisa told him, Your Excellency, he said, but, he said, I'm the one who fathered this constitution. Then Benaisa told him, but Your Excellency, when your child has died, you perform a decent what? Funeral. This was advice from his Attorney General, a technical person. Now, let me tell you, we have to steward the conflicts we have had in this country properly, or less we
So
lose
did
sight.
he agree or he did not?
But if Obote was a university dropout, you have been told by the Attorney General, a man of letters, that bury the thing. What do you do? And he was first. I mean, we've seen over the years now, we have contemporary politics to learn from.
But Obote had overrun the parties, the Uganda parties. So what did he want to keep kingdoms?
It was Idi Amin.
On the command,
Idi
on the
Amin.
order.
Yes, he was the commander-in-chief, but Idi Amin over, what do they call it? Went beyond his
Beyond
command
what?
instructions.
What were his instructions? Yes. Tell the viewers.
No, some of these things are in written history. The instructions.
Repeating
Yes.
itself.
No, there was alleged to be a cache of weapons at the palace.
And there was.
Yes, through a certain multinational company that had brought them disguised as earth-moving equipment. And the instruction to Idi Amin was to go and cause the arrest of the Kabaka. When he reached the palace, he was confronted with gunfire. And he responded in the manner in which what? He best knew.
Did they find the guns?
They did.
Yeah, they did.
Plenty.
They did.
And it's on record.
They
And
did.
the Kabaka
Well,
has it in his
they
books.
they called the British envoy to come and witness.
Yeah.
All these things are left out of our history, by the way.
Let's
To the
have
viewers.
Sarah.
To
We've
the
eaten into her
viewers.
mind.
So
Yes.
once after deleting the
This is
episodes,
because we are
that's
discussing
where
independence,
Yes.
and we have been conditioned to think that the problems of Uganda were created and
By
started with
Obote.
Obote.
Yeah.
No,
And
no.
I disagree with that.
I don't think that is my narrative, by the way.
That's what you are pushing.
No. Moderator, please. Can we have...
Breakdown of the constitutional state started with,
Can we have order on
with,
the
a,
we have
seated, with
order.
a
We have
sitting
order.
president
Please.
going to a marketplace and shooting extrajudicial execution of 6 people.
Can I submit, then
Edgar,
people
Edgar,
can
yes.
add?
Yes, you will
Because
make a
when you were
rejoinder after.
submitting, nobody interfered
yes.
with you.
Let's
Not
go.
that we agreed with all that you said.
We shall come back to
Not.
that.
We didn't
You're
agree with
protected
your
at this level.
submissions.
You're
So you
protected,
will
Sarah.
come in late. So let's be organized. So then after the pigeonhole constitution, as the name suggests, the copies were put in the MP's pigeonholes. And then they were convened and told to debate and pass the amended constitution, that the new constitution, and they will find copies in their pigeonholes, and that's what happened. And that's how we come to have the pigeonhole constitution in our history. As we have already dissected, of course, key among the amendments was abolition of kingdoms. And then, yes.
And
1967.
66 they were suspended.
And
67, yeah, that became a Republican.
Yes, that's the one that I'm talking
Actually, it's called
about.
the Republican Constitution.
Yes, and they declared Uganda a republic.
A unitary state.
A unitary state and republic. Then, of course, we had the abolition of the ceremonial president also. And then Dr. Bote became the executive prime minister.
president.
So those were the key amendments. From it is...
No, the land was also placed under.
from
That's when
it
we
is
created.
seven.
That's when we created the Uganda Land Commission.
Yes, but not that we had like the land decree of Idi Amin. Still people owned land. We still had the tenure systems under that constitution. The land decree came in through Idi Amin. So from then, I think the constitution was followed with the launch. The key political events were the launch of the Common Man's Charter, where Dr. Bote then thought to reclaim, for government of Uganda to reclaim majority shares in companies that were foreign dominated, among others.
No,
but
there
also,
was a schedule, not all foreign owned.
okay, the company, but please, Edgar, you will share your rebuttal. Among the key elements, and I know Joseph will speak more about
Okay,
the charter.
I'll let Joseph speak
Joseph
for UPC.
is
I'm
Yes,
not
Joseph
UPC
will
after all.
I will speak about the
No, this is about
charter.
Uganda's
I am
independence.
just-
UPC is very privileged to take the lead on this and
I
to
am
take the lead
just
of you.
speaking what I consider key highlights.
So
of the
much
moment.
obliged, much obliged.
Yes. So then from the Common Man's Charter, Obote also proposed the electoral amendments that thought to say that if you are
1 plus
elected an
2.
MP, then you should win, be voted as well from 2 other districts,
No, regions.
2 other regions, so that remove like tribal chiefs from becoming leaders. Unfortunately, it was overthrown before that was implemented. But I think, to me, could have been a good proposal, considering the tribalism and nepotism that we have been struggling with since independence. From there, then, we have the Idi Amin coup, still instigated by, or supported by the British. And Idi Amin did not pretend to rule via the constitution. He was ruling, passing decrees with no parliament. I really, considering the constitutional turbulence we've had over time and the pretense around the constitution, I think Idi Amin was honest at that front, saying, well, I will not abide by these things. Let me do away with them.
Idrisi Mustafa, who was his vice president, was asked when he appeared before the Uganda Human Rights Commission, he was asked about reference to the constitution and hiyo ni kitu gani? What is the constitution? Hiyo ni kitu gani?
Is that what I mean?
So I don't know whether I mean he was being honest or he just had no clue.
He had no clue.
He had no clue.
It simply didn't matter.
Maybe both, because later he enacted laws by decree. Maybe he did not understand. Also, but he had been a senior political actor.
Yeah.
He had been a senior from
He was a soldier.
whatever. Our politics
I'm sorry,
were dominated
I'm sorry
since
I'm
then.
interfering, but
No,
You're
no,
just
you will
passionate
give a
about
rebuttal.
the caliber
No,
of
please,
soldiers we had at the time, believe me.
Please.
Just
They
passionate.
just had no clue of these things.
So,
And it's
Sarah,
not
yes.
a surprise that we ended sinking as a
Deeper.
country, and we're still trying to recover from it.
But
I mean,
what
it's
is-
from
but
Nagongera,
what
the-
is the conduct
the
of
rail
educated
network.
people that we have today? And we shall come to that.
They're actually,
If the
they're actually
problem-
worse than the
If
literates.
the problem
That's the
was
point Edgar's
education,
making.
what is the problem today? Because we still have aminism.
Wow.
No, we actually have worse.
Yes. What's actually
Literate,
so what
organized,
is
and
the problem education?
No.
I think that's where we shall conclude
Yes.
from, because we still have the same acts with highly educated people in charge. So from Idi Amin,
The
you have
problem is us, the citizenry. We permitted a
So
lot, we've given them latitude
from
to
Idi
do the
Amin,
things
of
that
course,
they do.
we'll
Edgar,
go
I
to
need
the
to give
the
the
Mosh
opportunity to other...
to the Mosh
Yes.
conference, and then the involvement of Tanzania to remove Idi Amin, together with people that met in Mosh. Edgar talked about that, I will not repeat it. And then the Paul Mwanga Commission, of course, we had Useful Reb, Naisa, and then Paul Mwanga Commission to organize the 1980 elections. After which, then a rebel movement, President Museveni, who was number 3 in the race. I don't remember the exact votes he had. Maybe Joseph knows. But I know he had about not more than 50 votes from my area, and my family having been UPM. So I know that we were very few people then that really supported the President Museveni and his team, UPM. So how he went to the bush on the claim of rigged election may be in public interest. because it was not his election that was rigged.
So
No, Edgar, you will not interfere, please. Can you be like a Rand Ferrer? When the lawyer is submitting, you don't
but we're not here, we're debating.
Can you behave?
Edgar, that point will come.
Can you
I will
behave?
get the opportunity to
Made
make
it
rebuttal.
very clear right from the word go. He was going to the bush. Whether elections are rigged
Or not.
rigged
But
or not.
he was not going to make
Okay,
it.
So-
but I'm using his excuse
Yes.
which he gave.
Edgar will give you an opportunity to
you will
rebut.
have your time,
the-
please.
yes.
Can you behave? So I'm submitting as a child who was in a UPM family. Then yes, my father was part of the original UPM leadership in Ochieno.
Wow.
There were very few. We knew them as children, and there was no way, even with the interference of Mary Magdalene himself, there was no way they would have won an election, and they knew about that. My father then said they thought they had a different program of changing the politics and the political ideology that they were introducing to the people. For him, that's what he believed as one of the UPM leaders. So the official reason we are given of going to the bush is because of a rigged election, officially. And I'm sure even young people know it. So my question has been as a citizen, okay, whose election was rigged and who was aggrieved in that election? I think the most aggrieved person would have been Kawanga Semogera and his Democratic Party in that election.
But his funders, the German Social Democrats, convinced him to go and sit in, to take the opposition, the seat of the... I don't want to go into it. And by the whole story of rigged elections, Vincent Sekono,
Sorry,
he's still around. I think Vincent Sekono owns this country.
I think you should have given Tabaro more time.
No, but he had his time. He had his
Vincent
time.
Sekono was
And
the
he
chairman.
chose what to submit about.
Oh, not chairman, secretary.
He's a critical teacher. He's a critical teacher.
So he,
He might have had extensive time
Edgar,
to
Edgar, you
consider this.
You
lecturer,
had your
right?
time.
I no longer teach.
You know that.
He taught a few times.
I taught for.
I tell you this.
So he's saying the election was not rigged.
It reflected the general will of the people in the conditions, the atmosphere in which we held the
So you are
election.
saying Obote won.
Of course, he did.
He did.
Convince-
Straight up.
convincing.
He did.
In Ochieno, Obote won. Even in '86,
You see,
we
but
had
you
to
see,
force Obote come back.
just a quick rejoinder. The election, you'd elect a parliament, and the majority would form the what?
Yeah.
Parliamentary
Yeah, because the parliamentary
It was a parliamentary system, yes.
By the time we went to the vote, we had 18 unopposed members of UPCs.
You were UPC.
No.
Or your
We are not
father,
UPC in my family, please.
Okay.
The
When
country,
you say
Uganda,
we
that we,
were-
and we call it.
My family belongs to UNLF anti-dictatorship of the
That I still have to reconcile with it, but it's a fantastic city.
So,
But you can tell the Uganda's competitors.
Situate
Even
me
I failed
properly.
panelists.
Yes.
Dear viewers,
depends.
we are failing to proceed.
Yeah.
no, not that we're going to proceed.
Can I make
No,
my
actually,
comment?
we are attempting to build a foundation. I completely concur with Edgar.
And I'm putting it to you that you're giving wrong testimony.
On what?
On Uganda's history.
I am saying President Museveni has officially used a rigged election as his
Edgar,
as
Alleged
his-
alleged rig.
Yes,
Edgar,
we want to know that.
the rules of the game are that you allow a person, as your fellow panelists, to complete the submission. Then you have the opportunity to
Complete
interject.
the lies that have been
Which
propagated.
is okay. then you're
Much obliged then.
On the issue of Luwero, to be clear and precise, I am using the official reason given by the rebel leader of the day, then who is now a president. I have in my home a book of why we went to why we waged a protracted war. I read it as a child. It was among the first books I read. I have read all the literature of President Museveni until recently, when I think that he's repeating himself and trying to amend some things. So I read that. He's on record saying it's because of a rigged election.
That
And
he went to the
yes,
bush.
the only issue he has added officially is human rights abuses.
Yeah.
Yes, officially, on his own account. I am not
In all his
using my
statements.
opinion, and I don't have information that you have. Otherwise, I would have shared it. So I'm sharing information I have plus official accounts of the actors of the day.
She already falsified information.
by the authors themselves and the actors. So what happened now, of course, 85, we come to the generals, Waziri Okero and Tito Okero. I think they were both Okeros. How they overthrew Obote and then
You'll be surprised who
the Nairobi peace
the
talks.
real authors of that coup were from within UPC. One of them being Paulo Mwanga,
So
who
then
expected this one in as president,
the Nairobi,
only to find Okello.
the Nairobi peace talks, and then the NRA stroke M, which captured power on 25th January.
26th January.
No. I am saying my account, please. You will give
you
but
are-
can you behave?
He was
I
referring
think
to
we're
President
gonna
Museveni. Why did we stick to Museveni's
They-
accounts then?
Tabaro and
Edgar,
Sarah.
our history, yeah,
Edgar,
Uganda history
can you behave?
is turbulent.
No,
it's full
but-
of chaos. You're
No,
carrying
Brenda, we
it.
need
You're
to
carrying
separate.
it to the future.
Let
But
it
Brenda, we
be
need to
reflected
save time.
here.
We need to save time.
Let's continue.
So what I'm saying is I have it on good sources that Kampala fell on 25th January. But
1985.
because the architects then wanted to avoid a coincidence of 25th January, a day that Idi Amin did a coup. Yes, they postponed the announcement to avoid the Idi Amin coincidence. But nature does not lie. Many things have shown that actually they are like Siamese twins in many aspects. So yes, God, Edgar will give his
Edgar and God bad, the same old.
So from,
He
from
mentored me. God is my
1996,
mentor.
so I want to quickly talk about the constitutional journey as I summarize.
Yes.
So in 1989, a constitutional review commission formed and the constitutional process started. I'm more interested in the terms of reference for the Odoch Commission. Among the terms of reference were three outstanding issues. One was to make sure that governance is according to the wishes, aspirations, and values of the people, which is enshrined in Article 1 of the Constitution. But also the second outstanding reference was to put in place mechanisms for orderly succession of power to address the political question. Yes, I have the report, Edgar. If you have not read it, I will send it to you. Orderly succession of power. Framework, legal framework for orderly succession of power. And the same is repeated in paragraph 3 of the preamble of the 1995 Constitution. And the third outstanding issue was to provide clear avenues for separation of powers and checks and balances, which is also in our Constitution.
With the creation of the executive president and you talk of separation of powers.
Our Constitution has a doctrine of separation of powers as part of the basic structure.
Just
Even after mutilation,
Not complete
even
separation of
after
powers.
mutilation, we have the executive, which is independent, the legislature, which is independent, and the judiciary in the Constitution, even after
Ideally.
mutilation.
Ideally.
Yeah, you can say it is theoretical, but it is even there. Up
We are
to
speaking
today.
the Constitution.
It's
The
more like
independence
checks
of
and
the
balances.
judiciary, yes, but that's the doctrine
But-
of separation of powers.
but-
3 arms with checks and balances against each other.
The two are not the same. Separation of
Anyway,
powers
you
and
will
checks and
come in
balances.
later, please, Edgar. I don't know how you have decided to be indisciplined. in
You've
this
done it
show.
to me before on other shows. So it's I'm just administering the same medicine.
Edgar,
I'm just administering the same medicine.
my expense, we want to revenge you at my own expense.
The only difference is that my
We can
dosage
do
is
that.
higher. The medication is the same.
You will carry on the revenge.
To the
where
extent
where
that
it
you
was-
want to distort the basic doctrine of our Constitution, just to revenge.
No,
That
no, no.
shows the problem of Uganda really. It's being manifested on this show.
Edgar, give me-
An overbearing presidency.
As I conclude today, Damien, as I conclude on this take, sorry it has been long, but I think it's important. Even to bring out
But
the
you see,
controversies
we are not even agreed
on
on
how.
our history. So how can we then go forward if we are not agreed on our history?
By the way, it's not that we agreed with the things Edgar submitted, but out of respect and principles of debate, we let him have his say. But it's not that I agreed 100% with what
I
he
didn't give
submitted.
any opinion. These are facts. No if you want me to give opinions, I will delve into opinions.
We are
let's-
going to
Damien,
Yes.
yeah,
Sarah, as you make your conclusion.
the
to hear
outstanding,
his
I want to
opinion,
conclude with the observations of the Munster Report, 1961. The observations of the Munster Report, 1961, highlighted the political challenges of us as a nation, and there are 3. One is lack of compromise by the actors. and tolerance for dissenting voices, however small or large. The second observation is lack of organized political structures by the Muster report. The third observation is lack of putting people central in terms of values and aspirations and governing people according to their wishes, but also in terms of giving them accountability, having accountable leaders. Unfortunately, even in the making of the 1995 Constitution, a report authored by Doching, the controversial things, these elements were still, had an impact on what we got as the 1995 Constitution. Failure to compromise, failure to recognize and listen to minority views, lack of clear political structures, even the ones that were put in the Constitution have since been distorted.
We created the monster, the
Now,
movement system.
and of course,
it was
the
constitutionalized.
people not being central in terms of their wishes and aspirations, but also being accountable to them. We have very few leaders who think accountability to the people matters. The best accountability that this country sees is paper accountability, which most of the time is forged in terms of monies, but we do not have accountable leadership in terms of democratic principles.
Which, are you referring to the government leadership or across the board?
I am talking about the 59 years of independence. Yes. So then when you look at the
59?
Yes.
If 59, then I would have a very strong response to that.
Yes. Of course, 59, 36 of them are under NRM.
Yeah.
Yeah, so even when you do the roundup, talk in terms of majority, really,
Because Munster report,
years
the three elements raised by Munster were absolutely and totally and with evidence delivered by Uganda Peoples Congress in the short 12 years of our government.
Okay,
but I'll explain.
You will talk about the 12 years of independence. I am talking
By
about UPC. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, by UPC, but I'm talking about largely about Uganda.
59 years.
And I am not apportioning any particular blame to the regime as I conclude.
No, simply that, simply that I thought you were trying to refer to where we are at the moment as a quagmire.
Yes.
To try and make the argument for us to build the
I
best
am
in which we're
looking
able
at
to do a
the
launch-up.
issues
Yeah,
in
broadly, yes.
1961, in the build-up to independence,
Yes,
and where it was 1960, No, the Muster
And where we
report,
are now.
Muster report is 1961.
61,
Yes,
yeah.
before
These are
independence.
still the issues today. 60 years
No, fair
down the
enough. No,
road.
I totally concur.
Yes.
Uganda
Then when you
Independence
look at the controversial
Commission.
issues in the build-up to independence, or what people fought for independence, among the issues was the political question, and Uganda was at the center of it. There were issues of land rights and human rights. We are still at the same, I don't know, or even worse situation. We have the highest levels of land grabbing. We have highest levels of human rights violations, including international sanctions on people's heads in this country today.
Not international sanctions.
U.S. sanctions.
Are those international?
It's an international part of international community.
No, I think.
So what is international for you? Is it UN?
Okay. If tomorrow Central African Republic
Sorry, you
indicted
know you're
me-
talking to your land colleague, a law teacher. That is his problem.
I think that's why
But
we're
yes,
having
it's
a
part of
factual
yes.
argument.
And as I,
If you're
my
sanctioned-
last
if you're
submission,
sanctioned
I am
by
not
Eritrea
listening
tomorrow,
to you.
would that be-
I am not listening to you, Edgar, and stop being disruptive when time will come.
I've learned the ways of the millennials. They are disruptive.
I am not a millennial, unfortunately.
I'm millennial thinking.
Oh my.
But as I conclude today, these are the same questions.
issues, yeah.
Political questions. Today, at the center of political debate, we have Mairoland.
Land.
Because you've chosen to see it that way. There are land questions in other parts of the country. There are. I was in court today. I was in the
Dear
constitutional court.
viewers, we are sorry for the disruptive debate, and I am not responsible. We have the Mairo debate today. We have Mairo debate, which is at the heart of personal liberty, fundamental rights and freedoms. We have the
Just a
contestation
very quick
of,
rejoinder.
I am not giving you space. Let me conclude.
This is
We
dictatorship
have-
we are talking about.
Yes. Because you have become too disruptive.
No, because the land question is not just a Uganda question.
You will have
I
your
was
say.
in court earlier today,
And no
and
police.
the issue was
What kind of
Basongora
person is
and Bakonjo in the Rwezoris. And the issue at the center of their conflict is land. But she's narrowing the land question in Uganda to Buganda.
I am mentioning
No,
the
but
political
Edgar,
debates.
you-
Otherwise, I can put in Amuru and arrest why our government is grabbing land. It is not only in Uganda. I know the land
Elements
crisis.
in the government, not the government.
Please, you would defend your government. You have your time. Only you can be ordered.
It's your government as
So,
well.
it is not.
We elected it.
Not me.
Okay, they won the elections.
Okay, Edgar.
Okay.
Okay, let me bring in Monicah. Monicah, we are doing.
No, but moderator, please, I think this is unacceptable.
Yes.
And we cannot debate like this on this show.
Yeah, we shall.
I'm much
completely
obliged.
out of order.
I'm much obliged. My deepest apologies. Let us.
Monicah, yes,
well,
I need you to
yeah,
come in. We are
I
giving
want
our
to-
count on the 59 years of Uganda's
First of
independence.
all, to begin to thank the first two discussants, Mr. Tabaro and Sarah here have done good discussion or deliberation on giving us the perspective, the background, the history of our country. Of course, from different angles on different issues, but the facts remain the same. However, my first point I want to put across is that, of course, the history that we are getting from the different people, Joseph here, these are all constitutional lawyers, I perceive, and they are more schooled, certainly, and I am junior in scholarship.
It doesn't matter.
In terms of the debate around these issues. But I just have the basics. And my impression, having been around in the politics as well as also being a fourth generational leader, I think post-independence, now we have the benefit to read.
Post 1986. That's when Uganda began.
It can't be independent. It has to be 1986. Perhaps I'm a fourth generation. Yeah. So certainly we read the history that has been put down for us. And like you noted, our political history has a lot of turbulences in it. But he who documents and puts down the history influences and, whatever is put down by someone is taken, and you are able to influence much more than one who has not written. I don't know if Tabara has written. Sarah here is a good constitutional lawyer. I don't know if she has also documented her perspectives, her views on this matter. I'm sure Mr. Ochieno here has something to put across. So in that respect, I know that we read that history from the perspective of he who wants to shape the narrative. And the narrative that we have, of course, this millennia team perhaps is a bit, shaped in a certain perspective. And my analysis may be limited to, what we see across the different governments, so to say. And so for me, I look at it from the political turbulence or political history of Uganda based on the constitutions and the leaders that we've had. It is not certainly a good one. It is not something that we inherited that was excellent per se. But also, I note that there is a lot of repeats that are happening from independence up to date. There is no learning that is happening, even in the current teams that are leading. And so, for me, in my conclusion, I think that 59 years down the road, we have lost so many opportunities to give Uganda a better narrative, a better future, a better inheritance. And if I look at the four constitutions that we've had, I think 1962, and what Sarah puts across in terms of the Monster Report, which shaped the narrative of independence, those issues, yes, we agree, they still exist very much so. 1967, Constitution, 66, 62, 66, 67, and then 95. Each of them has its own distinctions and different items they brought on board.
You're missing out one of 1978.
Was there a constitution in 1978?
Yes.
The
That is
declaration.
not documented.
Moshi. Moshi spirit.
The declaration.
It's a spirit.
The spirit of
It's a
Moshi.
ghost.
The ghost of Moshi.
Well, it was at the center of a constitutional case
Yeah.
in 1979. Dr.
So
Kawanga Somogero's
that
case.
particular conversation, for me as this generational leader, I note that, of course, history has repeated itself. We have lost the opportunity to use the lessons in those various different, political terrains to shape a better future for the country. And what I note, of course, is that in 1962, we inherited a system from the colonial government which would have afforded our country a better economic, opportunity if well applied, of course, the political opportunity as well. And so in 1962 to 1966, we see some sort of political stability. And then from 1966 onwards to 1985, some sort of political instability and a lot of turbulence in terms of constitutional orders as well as the other indicators. And then, of course, what happened? Our focus usually is this current team that has had a lot of time
And goodwill.
and goodwill from the people to change so much that we had between that political turbulence, which has been also misused or lost in a way. So my analysis is around that. So 1970, in the 70s and the 60s, of course, 70s and 80s, we lost the opportunity that the foundation we had in 1962 up to about 66. So in the early 70s and 80s, we see a lot of issues, which then, of course, our narrative now in the NRM now comes into. A lot of times claim that there was not much done by the previous governments, which I don't want to discuss because a lot has been given to me concerning the current, contribution of this current government. So I see that in 1970 there was a free fall of the economy. 1970 and 80s, total destruction of the economy, and we
From 81.
Probably.
There was a recovery program.
yes,
And it
we
delivered
had
in some aspects.
in the export sector. We saw that only about 1 or 2 cash crops. You were talking about that.
Tea
it was only
and-
coffee,
tea and coffee.
which was being exported.
Tea
Actually,
and coffee.
cotton.
You remember Kakonde
Cotton
tea
was
estate
at,
was one of the movement of Samuel Mugisha. When of course, he prioritized Mubende,
So-
where he was MP. Was one of the coffee tea factories. That
Let
we
us
went.
admit.
Let me conclude on my, because I will lose track of
Track-
my
much
course.
obliged.
So in terms of the economic, because the politics should inform us on what was happening in the economic, upturns as well of the economy. So I think that the economic terrain at that time was following the turbulence that we had, the constitutional turbulence, which you have ably given our viewers. And so, of course, 1986, the current government comes in with some structural programs, structural adjustment programs, IMF and all that, informed from that perspective to do so many economic interventions. And of course, both negatives and positives happened
Which
in there.
was a complete
And,
departure from a document they issued in 1984.
Well, it depended on the
Complete
global
departure.
discussion.
But Edgar, can't
Because
you
at
control
that
yourself?
time, what was the dictates of the
Control. You
times
will have time.
were around structural adjustment programs globally, and particularly for the African countries. So I think that the NRM, when they came in 1986, they tried to start a recovery of the economy then, and they did quite a lot of things, as we read from the literature that we have, to the extent that our economy was able to recover, to become at least an independent private sector in terms of dealing with progressively the bottlenecks of trade and production, because initially we had so much from Kenya. You noted that in your discussion, from the neighboring countries. So we see now the private sector starting to
There was
grow
growth.
because of the
There
foreign
was-
direct
there was growth.
investment.
Accelerated growth.
Yes, and of course we hear
But
that from a lot of
development is
reports.
another issue.
Development is another issue, but accelerated economic growth
that was
and those
delivered.
indicators,
That
we
was
see them
delivered,
all
yeah.
over the place. And of course, in terms of that conversation, for me, what really stands out for me is the fact that the NRM has had 36 plus years, which we can gauge with the countries that are our neighbors. These United Arab Emirates apparently took 30 years to recover from whatever they were going through and became an economic hub right now. South Korea, many countries that way, Malaysia, China, I don't know.
At the time I was growing up
about
in the
that.
80s, China was perennially under starvation.
So
But now the world
that
power.
discussion, Tabaro, is very important. For me, I'm more concerned with the lost opportunities that we've had over the 59 years.
Yes.
Our country inherited an economy which was poised to become self-sustaining mid-economy in the short term. And nevertheless, withstanding the economic turbulence or political turbulence that we had, it was a shorter time, not more than 10 years or so. The 30-something years we've had from 1986 would have afforded us the opportunity to build a better Uganda.
But
unfortunately, we've lost those opportunities. Number two, in the area of constitutional or constitutionalism, the 26 years of the 1995, of course, the constitutional lawyers here can give a better perspective in that direction. However, for me, I know that when we got the opportunity to get this 1995 constitution, many things, like you noted, the high expectations about this 1995 constitution was evident in the country. That's what we read. And the key pillars, one, the trust that the framers of the constitution gave to an individual, because at that time he was a leader that seemed to be the promise himself to the population. And that promise to have him build the economy, he gave so many promises to the entire country. And the constitution seemed to have given him so much power. And that power, I don't know, in the other constitutions was a bit limited, I think. But this particular one also gave the president a lot of powers, which have since then, of course, been overutilized. And he used to abuse so many of the processes, or the constitution, so to speak. So Uganda seems to be having a challenge or a disconnect between constitutionalism and what the ideal, the leaders rather that come, instead of applying the principles of constitutionalism, they choose to behave like the previous people. The military coups. We have had so many military coups physically. When 1986 government came in, I think they also encountered more than 14 rebellions, insurgencies across the country.
The military thing. No, for me, I was a young student whose aspirations was kicked thanks to NRA and DP in 1985.
But
and we are yet to recover from that. But anyway.
Even if we've had this long-standing constitution,
He ran into exile through Panya.
the military coups, okay, the coups rather, the constitutional coups that we've had on the constitution itself as well have been so numerous in this current constitutional order. And so, of course, Sarah talked about checks and balances. We talk about the rundown of all those other, systems and powers from other, arms of government. And so it is a painstaking, exercise to discuss 59 years of our independence. But we cannot say that all is lost. There are a few things that we can say, well, we still credit and say the economy of Uganda, for example, is still struggling, trying to be on the it falls and recovers, and there is a resilience with our economy, so to say, and also some indicators in our country under this constitution. We can count a few, not many. Tabaro talked about the peace, the pacification of the country, and of course the level at which we are as an army, I think, in the region. That is what we have delivered critically in this time.
Oh, we maintain and, what is the word? Create, maintain and keep peace. From the Indian Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean.
Maybe. That is debatable to other people.
This is factual.
But it is factual that, well, the UPDF has reached a certain level where they feel they can even cross to other borders to maintain peace and keep peace and all that. But internally, as
and even
country,
to install government.
Yes, we have enjoyed a little bit of peace for 30 years. For an ordinary Ugandan, that seems to be a little bit, okay, there were some insurgencies in different parts of the country, but it did not bring a country to a standstill in the sense. But in a little way, an ordinary person will say, well, we have been enjoying the peace despite the challenges we have in the economy and all that. So that is point number one. The indicators in that area, fair. In the region we are talked about as, our army, the missions we undertake. Number two, the literacy rates, we can talk about that as something that we can. Of course, there's another argument to it, but at least we have been able to push to class over 80% or 70% of our children the literacy levels are high.
Uganda
At
pioneered.
what level?
Uganda
At
pioneered.
primary level,
Uganda-
because the
P1
dropout rates,
enrollment.
P1 up to P7, the enrollment. But the dropout, we are left only with about 2 million at secondary level, when 12 joined at primary level. So
There is 50%
dropout
at primary level.
right now.
Those who enroll
And it is
those
the
who
voice
sit
of the future.
P7.
She's trying to be absolutely, hopeful.
Hopeful,
and,
yes.
positive.
Of course,
going forward.
the other indicators, child
I
mortality
have very
has
strong
gone
views.
down.
I have very strong views for UPE. And
Yes.
They
In
are,
favor of
they
UPE.
are.
Okay, we'll
But
go
I'll
there.
express them.
Yes.
generally, I'm just doing a general map, and I can say 1 or 2, 4 indicators. The private sector has, strengthened itself. Again, there is a debate on that right now. So at the end of the conversation, of course, we have to know that there is a lot of things that we have missed in terms of opportunities in these 59 years. We could be another United Arab Emirates right now as a nation, having all that it takes, the natural resources, the good climate, and then we go back to what Sarah was talking about, the 3 conditions that we were given or which were highlighted under the Monster report and that we did not utilize or did not address in terms of concerns over the years. All these, I don't know how many presidents that have been in these positions, we could have taken advantage. Building systems, we are still talking about systems, institutional systems that cannot effectively operate, upon which the democracy that we are talking about or we desire can rest. Number 2, the lack of, the mistrust or the absence of considering people's aspirations as number 1 in Article 1. That is now witnessed in the discussion we are having. The need to mutilate Chapter 4 of the Constitution. If we reach that point,
sacrosanct.
that is
provisions,
terrible,
yeah.
And the other one was what? What did you say the other concern was?
Lack of proper
Succession.
framework for
handover
orderly
power.
succession of political power.
Of course, that one has never happened, So as a nation, we are still stuck. But I think the first starting
There was
point,
a handover from Paulo.
the starting point has been the narrative. Failure to present the actual narrative and learning from it to do a better job for the current leaders. And having been given an opportunity to be a leader in this country, it is certainly very, very demoralizing for you to sit in these spaces to have this conversation. I think Mr. Joseph Ochieno must be even more demoralized, but it doesn't belong to my generation. For us who came in here recently...
Stop aging me.
Oh, sorry. In terms of the
Jen, of course you do. Of course,
intellectual
no, of course you do.
ideological
But
issues,
fine.
not the
Fine,
age. Yeah.
fine, I'm a bit here.
Yeah,
at the end,
so
yes.
it is a big concern. So I want to thank you, the teams that are here. Yes, you've given us a very good projection and also a flashback on what we have. But now the question is, whose narrative do we take? Because now I'm sure Mr. Ochieno is going to give us another.
A different tangent.
And that gives
speak
us
that narrative.
a conclusion from what a certain
Ochieno's
professor
narrative.
was talking about, that we don't have those ideologies. Now there is a UPC ideology, there is an NRM ideology, there is another, I don't know which one Tabaro is, there is a civil society ideology. There is no common consensus and agreement on where we want to go, even as we celebrate this
Off air, I
59.
told you I'm for regionalism.
Who talks about
Integration.
regionalism even
That's
now?
it.
Okay, let's have Ochieno and we seize count on.
No, it's
59
fantastic.
years of
It is fantastic being here. I had to run from Nagongera. It's the first time I'm around town in a very long time, several weeks. I had incidents which were threatening by this NRA regime, but that's neither here nor there. But my biggest concern is that I wanted to be here at 1 o'clock, have tea with you guys, but it took me 2 extra hours, even after the estimates I had between Mukono and the studios here, partly because of the incompetence of this NRA regime. I just about managed to reach here. I hold it very strongly. And yet, that having been said, I was completely committed to being on this program because it's a very, very important occasion that we're looking at 60, just closing to my age, actually. Anita, closing to my age. And it's even much more exciting being with Edgar and Anita for the first time. And of course, my wonderful, beautiful friend and colleague, Sarah, who was always leading us on this, and indeed on the national programs. I think part of the discourse between Sarah and Edgar there are actually nuances there which are very serious. And part of this is, to an extent, what Anita is saying. There is no national narrative, but the national narrative has got really nothing to do with ideologies. Ideologies are party political specific. UPC has got an ideology, NRS has absolutely none. DP sort of ish, yes. I don't know about the rest of the other political parties and organizations. Now, number one. Number two, in fact, you don't necessarily need to be very clearly articulated ideologically to address the issues, the challenges we're facing as a nation state. After all, the vast majority of our people basically are really about people who basically, we just want hope for independence to be delivered. That said, actually, as the official voice of Uganda Peoples Congress, I'm really delighted that our party actually delivered independence now coming to 60 years ago. I must say that the Monster report that Sarah you referred to, young citizens, this country, Anita, is possible. Picking from me and some of the conversations taking place and some of the young Ugandans looking and watching, maybe what guys need to do beyond here is to read Milton Obote's Notes on Concealment of Genocide in Uganda, read Museveni's 10 editions of the Mustard Seed, pick whatever documentation they can pick from DP, pick Sir Edward Motesa's Discretion of My Kingdom.
Yes.
Just those alone,
Also, Paul Makubia's just
the Makubia stuff, yes. And you will just about begin to see
somewhere
that these things are substantially hanging. And to an extent, the scholarly Edgar was being relatively advantaged, because I don't know what the other issues might have been in the other studios. But it brings to the reality, Anita, that the history of this country has been absolutely dwarfed in shambles. It is our job to try and make sure that we correct it, number one. Number two, coming into the question, the context of independence, and the constitutional question of independence, Sarah, I interjected not rudely, but just to make sure that I don't forget. The Monster report, one of the things that UPC actually did very, very early on, and before I actually come to that, and allow me to get into this, my last Sunday's piece was on this very particular issue about leading towards our independence, for which I actually credit, of course, the UPC as the leading political party on this. I credit the Democratic Party, the political parties that existed at the time. I credit Uganda Kingdom, and I credit all the other kingdoms that existed in Uganda, and all the national identities that participated in our independence conferences in London. There was a general conversation, there were disagreements, Anita, but actually consensus was arrived at for our independence. One, the form of the constitution that we're going to take, and two, the outstanding national questions, whether the Buganda Bunyoro, the lost counties, and many of these other things. So Ugandan parents have ever sat like this, in diversity, and by and large agreed. And they did, by and large, in Lancaster, could argue whether they're representative or not. That's a different question, number one. Number two, leading to our independence from 1962, UPC won those elections. We won those elections, we sought for a government of nationality, really to bring the nation together, because our constitution at the time allowed the Westminster style, allowed the largest party to form a government, and if the largest government formed a government, they had the rights to have 9 nominated seats. With 9 nominated seats, UPC would have a struggling majority. Consciously, UPC opted to say, let's have a government of nation, and we are not going to that detail, meaning we come together to have the formalities around where we're able to govern by consensus. It would have involved DP, UPC, KY, which had now been formed. KY was not formed in London, which had now been formed. And then we discuss whatever outstanding national issue questions, and perhaps even the national programs, if it's a UPC manifesto, simply say, we don't like this, perhaps too left-wing, and then you govern by consensus. That was a lost opportunity. Who rejected that? On record. It was not Sir Edward, it was not Buganda, it was the Democratic Party that rejected the government of nationality. That is Ben Chiwanuka. He refused to join the government of nationality, not because of Milton Obote, not because of those guys, no. He simply could not sit on the same national table with Sir Edward. Why? Because of, in a way, the Buganda question, the Buganda Catholic thing, and in a way, Mengo conflict.
DP was formed as a counter to Mengo.
Indeed, absolutely. So that was the beginning of the quagmire we have at independence. There was a total commitment, even credit to Sir Edward, because he accepted, although reluctantly, to participate in this government. It was DP that rejected the idea. Now the point is, Ugandan leaders need to talk about this, and Ugandan citizens, including particularly Uganda scholars need to talk about, but some of the scholars actually...
Just a quick rejoinder, Joseph, just a quick rejoinder. Actually, people talk about political violence or election violence. It started in 1961 with Benedicto Chiwanuka.
I mentioned that.
Yes,
I
1961. Actually, the opponents of DP in Uganda had their properties razed.
Wow.
Yes.
These things need to talk about.
You never hear it in our narrative. Everybody starts talking of 1980 elections and the violence. We've had a history of violence during elections.
I did mention about that, but if Ochieno could submit so that we...
Yeah, so indeed, so it was really about that. So, and it was a question about the 1966. That's a bit
there was goodwill
so really,
before.
goodwill at independence. You know, we formed a government of national. We formed because DP refused. We went for a coalition government with KY. Really, not because...
Were there only 3 parties?
Three main parties in parliament at the time.
But the others merged, the UPUs of Retsiva, William Retsiva.
Indeed. And
Jolly Joe Chiwanuka, the grandfather.
Which was the regional breakaway.
The grandfather of Chirua Chiwanuka, the current attorney general.
Yeah, so we, you know, so we had we went for a coalition government with the Kabaka. And the reason we went for was not because we needed Buganda, and I need to say this on record. It's not because UPC needed Buganda or UPC needed Mengo. UPC...
Did you have majority?
Yes,
of course we did, and that's what I've just explained. UPC was founded in Buganda by Baganda. The first leader was Ignatius Musazi in Luwero, you know. So the Milton Obotes were the founder members of UPC, but Ignatius Musazi was the leader. So the point was this: UPC was founded as the political party for Africans, for Ugandans, to take ownership of a republic. So at independence, we were just very much about building this national identity, the national quest, and the national interest. So really, it was not about selfish UPC want to govern for ourselves. No, it was about Uganda Peoples Congress, the ideas that we want to govern for the Republic of Uganda.
You may make it known to the viewers that Obote was first elected to Parliament, Legico, representing Lugazi, the Uganda constituency.
So,
but there were many plantation workers.
So what happens? What happens moving from there?
Interesting history.
So what happens moving from there was that yes. So we thought we would work together in that and build consensus. Remember, UPC had again helped in the unlocking of votes in Buganda, where there was indirect elections, which too much time for us to delve into. It's whether you guys go into it, whatever happened. But fast forward to 1963. 1 year after independence, was because we're so much Ugandan nationals and because we detested, and for me that's official, we detested the idea that some funny governor general of the Queen of England should be at State House, should be the head of state. We said no, thinking ahead. We got our independence. We generally want independence. So we want to abolish the office of Governor General so that we create a titular office of president, a symbolic president like president of Italy.
You did well. That is
president of Italy, president of Germany. Do you know their names? President of Israel. Do you know their names? You don't. So symbolic positions elected by parliament, prime minister, executive. And that was the thing. So that is how the election of Sir Edward came. But very quickly, at that stage in 1963, the quick question then now comes, who should be the first president?
Joseph, it says the election was rigged for Sir Edward Mutesa.
Was there an election?
Yes, there was.
Yes.
1963?
Yes, Nadiope was a candidate.
Election, yes.
Nadiope was a
our
candidate.
vice president, was a candidate. And DP, you guys, you sat with Nadiope in Barara,
yes,
you know, to support Nadiope versus UPC. We supporting Sir Edward Mutesa as first president of Uganda. Why? We're considering the monster issues. Because we recognize Sir Edward was the most rounded kind of large national identity. We wanted to stabilize, have confidence amongst ourselves, notwithstanding all this.
I disagree with that. This is what happened exactly.
We did that, and we elected Sir Edward. This is what Parliament elected Sir Edward. You know? So from then on...
the election was actually challenged. The election was challenged, and Dr. Bote and his Attorney General, Vinaisa, in the
1963 election.
The 1963 election for the president.
Yes.
The titular head as the head of state.
But then we see.
Let me tell you what happened. The matter went to court, and they cancelled the election, and Obote passed legislation validating the election, and that is the grounding to Article 92 of our Constitution that prescribes prescribes what? The
Modification of laws?
no, modification of laws.
Legislating to defeat the decision of court.
a decision of court.
Retrospective
Yes.
legislation.
I've actually heard that. I'm not particularly very familiar with it. In fact, I have cause to make reference to that. I need to do some more research on it. But I need to say something. You're saying something.
I need to say something because it seems as though Joseph is trying to give us a very good picture of UPC, but I see that many of the things that were, yes, you are doing a good job at that.
Thank you. I'm delivering.
Yes, and I see
Is
that
cherry picking.
there is a lot of repeat things that are being picked with the current government, using the law, because that constitution was trying to resolve the political questions then. And we are seeing the same thing happening.
You mean
In terms
the
of-
First
But how?
Amendment?
Yes.
So
I
the
need-
First
I need
Amendment
about how.
was
So it is
And
not a new
political
thing that we are
manipulation.
seeing now, that the constitution is being manipulated.
Honourable?
The First Amendment was a political manipulation.
Absolutely.
Which was
I was trying to say is that whenever the constitution has come in the war of our politics, we've done away with
We
it.
get to redo it.
So,
We
so
do
Anita
it
and
to-
Sarah are rejecting the fact that we should
Monica.
not have, Monica, sorry, we should not have had a Ugandan president elected by parliament, but we should have some dubious Britain appointee.
No. Our comment is, because in my submission I did state that after 1 year of anniversary of independence, there was a constitutional amendment to make Mutesa ceremonial president. I didn't even know about the election.
No, it was
Of course,
from a-
that is a
was an
history
election.
that I don't know.
Yeah.
But I know
Because-
that the constitution was amended. Wait, I stated that the first constitutional amendment was to make Mutesa ceremonial president.
No, which is
And that
wrong. Because the
keeps
first
happening
constitution was,
even
no.
now.
The first constitution, no, I really need to submit this. The first, that amendment was not to make Mutesa president. The amendment was
create
to
the position
reclaim the office
Create the
office of presidents away from
the
some
Governor
funny
General.
British
From the Governor
Queen's
General.
representative
Yes, that
of
was
70
the
years ago.
amendment.
We need to clap for Uganda Peoples Congress, and Ugandans need to clap that we claimed back our
Okay,
constitution and
that's
our
very
republic, number one. Number two, it was an election. It was an election.
Which was nullified,
in it-
according to
we can then go ahead and discuss whatever happened, but we need to say there was an election, because we should not pick and choose when an election happens and which one is political, which is not. It's a political move, obviously, that we simply say that, look.
Exactly. Our political moves.
But independence is a political move. Forming a political party is a political move. So
what we do in Uganda, the culture that has been established over the years, is that whenever the constitution comes in the way of political moves or political maneuvers,
done away with.
or when certain people don't like the results, that's what they told the Delegates Conference of 1969.
well,
that when certain
But
people
it
lose
is
the
not
elections,
like
or
the
even in
vote
UPC,
outcome.
Our
when
time is
certain people
fast
lose
spent.
elections in
We need to have a
UPC,
short break.
they claim the others are not
Joseph,
UPC.
it's
Joseph, you conclude.
And the
it's all
constitutional
semantics,
maneuvers
It's all
are engaged
semantics.
in
I need to
as
give
well.
Joseph
We
in
need to
2
hear that.
seconds. I
Yes.
need you to conclude.
How many
We get to a
amendments
break,
did
then come
UPC
back.
engage in line with the
All of
constitution
them,
as well?
yes,
before?
maneuvers.
What are those constitutional maneuvers?
these events,
Yes.
I don't know any constitutional maneuver that UPC made.
Joe.
And it can be put in but constitutional amendments. Okay, let me make.
On the constitution, we're going to get deep into the constitution and the amendments and what happened.
But
Let's first have a break.
fast forward to. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, let's have.
but
first have a
what
short
is
break, then
happening is
return.
that basically you just have to, in some of these reports, Sarah, you just have to remove the dates and the names of the players. But
the same
should
issue.
read the same
I reject that idea because UPC will be very sanctioned because they're absolutely different. Thankfully, that's official.
Thank you very much, my panelists. Let's get into this short break, our dear viewers out there. This first segment has been quite heated because, of course, our history dictates that. It was, of course, messed up in this way, and I'm afraid to say that
we are not
messing
messing
it.
here. We are not messing here.
we are carrying
We are
it
not
almost
messing
here,
here.
but we shall forge a way forward after this day. And thank you for following. Please follow this discussion. We are live on YouTube, also live on Facebook, and we are trending. We are on our hashtag #ChatShowUG. Kindly follow, place your comments, be part of this interesting conversation. So right after the break, we have a lot to discuss about the Constitution and the journey it has gone till far up to now, 26 years. We need to find out how much we've scored. Let's have a short break and return. welcome back from a short break, and also thank you for joining our first segment that was highly energized. And let's see how the second part of this discussion goes. Joined, of course, on the panel again is one Edgar Tabaro, a senior lawyer in town, and also a regional, this is a diplomat, political diplomat in the region, like I want to say. And
I'm an East African, so
East African, okay.
I play my politics in that league.
Then also we are joined by Sarah Bireete, of course, our regular panelist, but also the executive director with the Center for Constitutional Governance, and Monicah Amoding, former woman MP of Kumi, and also an activist and a lawyer. Then finally is Joseph Ochieno, of course, the man from Nagongera, and one from the UPC leadership. Good to see you.
Till death do us part.
Till death do us part.
Till the future.
It's not just ideologue. Ideologue.
Yeah, good to see you. And of course, right into the discussion, I think, Edgar, let me start with you. And this time around, like the rules are, let us flow, and only when you interject when you have to, yeah, and when I give you permission to. Yes. So right up from the debate, from the short break, we've been analyzing, of course, giving us to the viewers the history of Uganda.
Contested history.
Yeah, the contested history of Uganda to the 59th year now into independence. Joseph hasn't concluded. You hadn't concluded. I'll start from there, and maybe I think that's where we should start from. You make your final conclusions, then we get into the depth of the Constitution and the 26 years.
No, that's very kind of you all, and,
Yes.
and sorry, Edgar. Yes, I think I was simply talking about where we're in 96. I make it very, very, very quick because of the broader context. And you know, one of the reasons why I always like this program, and one of the reasons why I completely believe that this should be the premier program of the future in this country is because of the content, the context, and the depth at which we go. And of course, the early segment showed that we need to do more, a lot of reading, a lot of writing, and a lot of sharing, and perhaps also a lot of listening, and open mind as a country going forward. So yes, I was actually saying that was at 1963, where I believe that the governing UPC, privileged to have been given that opportunity, did its best to try and bring the country together and to try and claim independence for Ugandans by knocking off the British. And of course, the British didn't like it, knocking off their governor general. By the Australia still has a governor general. Canada still has a governor general. You know, no, German, Britain is the president.
British dominance.
Yes. So New Zealand, Canada, Australia, you know, they still have a governor, Queen's representative. You know?
Under the
Oh, Scotland rejected, you know, but yes, still part of the British establishment in a way. So we
Hong Kong up to 97.
Oh, and the governor of Hong Kong, Chris Patton, I was a young activist in London by then. The Edgars thought the future of Uganda had arrived, you know. And so no, the governor of Hong Kong cried to Chris Patton
when he was boarding the ship.
Television. This
When
British
the
guy couldn't believe
when
that
the Union flag came down, he shed it with his daughters.
Are you?
It dawned on him that 100+ years of British dominion had
And come to an end, going to China. So really, we did a fantastic thing.
But just to interject, and really thinking aloud, you know the first country to get independence in Africa was Ghana.
No,
Which one?
Liberia,
Which year?
1847.
Yeah. The first African Republic, yes.
Okay, but from the British.
Post-independence.
Ghana in
Liberia was also
1957. Then the Queen had to attend, and it was a big celebration. There was nothing like crying. And by then they said that Ghana was the best administered and promising colony in Africa under the British. So why would the African governor in the Banana Republic cry when the Queen was celebrating in Ghana? The best of their colonies.
Moreover.
Yeah. Why?
Now Hong Kong is a different.
Hong Kong?
No, I'm saying of Ghana. The independence of Ghana in 1957.
No, Sarah,
Under Kwame Nkrumah.
there is this thing I don't want to go too much about. But the truth about the world
Power.
is that power and identity politics. You know, the Caucasian actually believes they control the world. You know, white supremacy is a fact, and it's total. That is why the whites who are substantially liberated, like Jeremy Corbyn, you know, and the likes, you know, oh, those are fantastic citizens of this world. You know, so no, these guys actually thought, you know, until today, many of them, you know, look at some of them who come, including who become citizens of Uganda and become part of the media megagon in Uganda. They think they own you, they own the public.
Actually, you could
They've got an
qualify it, you
entitlement
could
over
qualify it
colonial.
and say the wasps.
Well, so really, you go to
White
Kenya,
Anglo-Saxon
you know, and part of
The
our,
white settlers?
yes, and part of, which is again, unfortunately, is limited by time. You know, if you look at Kenya, which is a tiny little compound for Britain, you know, look at Zimbabwe, a tiny little compound for Zimbabwe. You know, the overthrow of Dr. Boten's first government. You know, one of the reasons we talk about the British
Zimbabwe, Universal Declaration
partly
of
because of what is of the many other issues stand on the
Universal
liberation
Declaration
of Southern
Independence.
Africa.
Yes.
You know, Zimbabwe, Angola, Namibia, and South Africa. These guys take these things very seriously. These are guys are my friends. I am a colleague of theirs in political dominions outside this place. But these are facts. You know, so no, the average white person in 1957 thought that the republic for gold was being left to be.
There's an offshoot of that in Africa. You remember Tiny Rowlands, eh?
Oh, gosh.
Tiny Rowlands was a director of Chatham House before he transitioned into business. I'm going into territory I'm not very comfortable saying on air, but he was actually involved in the 1985 coup.
He was.
Of Uganda?
Yes. Tiny Rowlands. Tiny Rowlands came to Obote and requested that the oil resources be allocated to him.
As an individual?
Yes.
All and cotton export
Obote
industry,
got
yes.
angry with him and called Okoth Ogola to deport him.
Immediately.
It's an open fact.
Well, there are other things that I wouldn't say them on air. I'm very uncomfortable.
I think one of the things you wouldn't say on air is that once Obote instructed him to park, he went to Nairobi, boarded an aircraft. You know, his aircraft in Nairobi, went to London and started looking for the Musevenis to give them back
Funding.
sympathy, funny kind of stuff to give them the air. That was the kind of thing that Edgar said.
The funds actually came.
This country,
Yes, but wasn't that, sorry to interject, Joseph, wasn't that the characteristic of even African coups in the post-independence?
No,
Because somebody
the
would
white
have
domination.
all the people
That white
needed.
domination.
I am talking about white
White
domination.
domination.
Yes, it's the same thing. Because you look at the era of Africa, of coups in Africa, and I hope we shall get time. Moderator, maybe you need to give an extra 30 minutes. How has independence played out in the whole African continent? We had an era of coups where all people needed was you get a satellite phone or whatever, you call BBC, you are on air, I'm going to fight this government, and the next day you have arms. People are calling you to give you arms.
Sarah, actually, what Edgar is saying, and what I'm actually saying, is that you're actually hitting on the surface. Basically, it's precisely my point, that these coups actually do take place, and we say Idi Amin has taken over power, and people clap in the streets of Kampala, when the master chief is the Israeli commando you know, in charge of the tanks in Kampala.
See,
that really is what
there's
we
the
talk
history
about.
of Uganda.
Yes. And when Nkrumah is overthrown, and we think Nkrumah did all this kind of stuff, and the Ghanaians, you know, neither here nor there, the thing has been administered from above.
The
from
same
elsewhere.
with Lumumba and how he was
Precisely,
killed, and
precisely.
the puppet Mobutu. I did say Idi Amin coup was by the British.
No, we're just putting the company.
Yes.
Idi Amin was not the person who executed the coup. The coup was executed by an immigrant Munyarwanda officer from Namutamba. I'm not comfortable mentioning his name on air. His family members are still around. He's deceased. He was the one who executed the coup.
Working with who?
With the MI6 and Mossad.
But of course, as scholars, what you are not telling the viewers is how we can redeem ourselves from that kind of...
How will you redeem yourself when you don't know where you are?
That's a very
That's
interesting
the
point,
question.
actually. Yes. So yeah, I don't know.
I mean,
We're trying to build an
even as a conflict,
way forward. And
we're talking about white supremacy.
Yes.
But we also have ethnic supremacy.
I'm hoping you'll have just something little on
Supremacy.
that.
Yes, ethnic. That is the biggest question in Uganda.
The identity question, which is
Identity
politics.
politics.
Identity politics.
Yeah, the identity question. And that's part of our problem. And then how do we manage that? It happens that the white supremacy power, global power, which is capitalist power anyway, they play us. And that's part of the challenge. That is why for me, Ochieno, with my 10 little shilling, I'll go to heaven and I'll leave the dollars here. You know, because yes, I'll run with the idea, the values, because I am an African and the African comes first.
That is what we are
Perhaps
missing.
we needed to add a reasonable number. We don't actually have to be 40%. A critical number of 5% of Ugandans wake up, take that position and we'll turn it around. After all, even in the white supremacy thing, anyway, usually not necessarily the majority amongst themselves.
We lost that opportunity in Thabo Mbeki. I happen to be an Mbekist. I studied and lived in South Africa for a while. And
While in exile or what?
no.
He's a lucky
I've
one.
been blessed.
Unlikely.
I've been not privileged.
Okay, so
Elite.
No, well, whether you call me elite or not, I still drive on the same potholes that you drive.
But your shock absorbers are
I
resolved.
have to replace them from time to time. I mean, I shudder if I got, God forbid, an accident on the way, and I had to be admitted in a hospital that doesn't have oxygen. I mean, whether you're elite or what, we face.
Fate happens.
Yeah,
to all of us.
and you see, that's why it's incumbent upon each one of us to hold our leaders accountable, irrespective of
where
our
you
political
belong.
and shade of opinion or ethnicity.
Yeah, that's fun.
I mean, I've on record, I've gone to court. I took Kaka to court. I had him cited for contempt. And the same Kaka who was not so long ago floating all court decisions was now suing for fairness.
Yeah, recent.
Yeah, I took on Kaihura against the advice of my own committee. I was banished from Chisoro.
For sure.
Yes. And I mean, I took on another identity.
Regards to the Kale family, by the way.
So you joined us in Congo.
Not really, but very
He's
near.
in Nairobi now.
No, I'm from Burundi now. No, but on a serious note, we don't hold our leaders accountable, and that's why they've had all this. We give them a lot of latitude, and they've overstepped the boundaries.
That's true.
And it's
The
become a
rulers
culture.
of today, the leaders that this country ever had were UPC leaders. And you know what he told me in 2002, and I'll bail the debate, forward. He told me that, Joe, in his veranda, for us in the UPC, we do everything. We work hard, and make sure they put it on the table. And once whatever we put on the table, young man, is UPC's high table, not crumbs from NRA or anybody or WCA. It becomes Uganda's high table.
Damian, I have great admiration for Obote's policies. They delivered for the common man. But Obote as a man, as a leader, I don't have as much admiration.
Absolutely fine. And I concede that on your behalf. My point, though, here is, it is possible for us, and I was just responding to your point, it's possible for us as Africans to deliver for African people. This is part of the conversation we're having.
Yes,
and then number two, which I was going to say, to go forward to where Monicah really wants us to go, is he also told me this thing about hospitals. The miraculous manner in which we're able to build 22 new hospitals. If you put UK's per capita today, that would be about 163 or thereabout hospitals. And I mean real hospitals, staffed, equipped, and everything, and drugged.
But even expansion of Mulago
in
Hospital.
8 years,
Same
including
time.
the expansion of Mulago.
Expansion of Mulago.
But then what he said that, Joe, look, after we did that, then Idi Amin was hurt by whatever, then he came to power. But those hospitals were serving Ugandans. It was not DP,
somebody
it was not
has made
UPC,
a
it was
comment
not different kind of identical.
that the 22 hospitals are both built.
Up to today.
This government is taking longer than necessary to put paint on them.
Just paint, yes.
Oh, I was in Butaleja the other day, and I don't want to say anything. But going forward
So
around our
is that a
independence.
failure on part of the government structure or the people?
Wait, now?
The failure to rehabilitate these hospitals.
The Fed? No, because that's a good point. Damian,
I passed judgment against the present administration, but I even passed harsher judgment on us, the people.
Why don't
how
you
do
demand?
you, when the people are muzzled, these
they
guys
captured.
they came by the gun. Museveni, actually, your
What
top
has
lawyer,
happened to
this
the people
guy,
who demand accountability,
this guy
Edgar?
broke into State House. So effectively, he's a squatter
has
there.
happened?
So
I think we
he
need-
uses
I
the
think we
military
have to
power.
Do a discussion around this.
What has happened to the few Ugandans who demand
Accountability.
who dare demand accountability?
And I'll give you the best examples.
Yeah.
I have great admiration for Dr. Kawanga Semogere.
Semogere.
Paulo. Yes.
Mr. Paul, I'm going to see you within the next few weeks.
Yeah,
actually.
Paul Semogere. He's a pacifist. Had Semogere been as bellicose as the sitting president, this country would have taken another tangent altogether. And the evidence is not hard to find. 1979, he goes to court to contest the election of Bina Issa. you know, the issue being the Moshi spirit and the 1967 constitution, the removal of
Of usefully, yeah.
Unfortunately, at the time court rendered the judgment, even the government he was contesting had been removed by the military commission, overtaken by events. Then 1985, Semogere was the forefront. He applied, he challenged, there were bail provisions. You know, these bail things are not very, they have a history. You guys in UPC enacted...
My party, yeah.
Yeah,
Good,
you
yes.
enacted the law.
You guys, yes, you did.
Act.
Okay.
You enacted the law in 1985.
Oh, my party, okay.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
Act number 10 of 1985.
But also they had the Emergency Powers Act of 1968.
No, when I'm talking of 85,
Detention without trial.
I'm talking about Semogere, in relation to Semogere. A law was passed, Act number 10 of 1985, varying the provisions of bail in the Magistrates Court Act. But the draftsman, and I think he did it intentionally, used the word may rather than shall. For us lawyers, understand the import of this. When in legislative drafting, if the provision shall appears, if shall appears in the provision, that means that's mandatory.
It's instructive.
If it's may, you have discretion. So those who are tried for political offences were supposed to apply for bail in the High Court, and not as it was before the Chief Magistrate. And we were preparing for elections in 1985. So Semogere was arrested for sedition. They were hoping he wouldn't apply for bail. For some reason, my father was the Chief Magistrate of Uganda Road at the time, and the matter came before him. And he interpreted. Mulenga appeared for Semogere together with Mulenga and Sam Kutesa. Appeared for Semogere. Sam Kutesa. Sam Juba was in exile. Juba was in Papua New Guinea. Yeah, they appeared as...
Some country.
He was in Papua New Guinea at that time, and in the South Pacific, Southwest Pacific. There were express orders from the powers that be. But we had a very sober Attorney General at that time, the late Ariko.
Yes.
Very sober, very Stephen Ariko.
Top
very
parliamentarian.
And I dare say the best Attorney General this country has ever had.
Yeah, UPC. Yeah.
Well, let us not personalize.
No,
what does the UPC?
Yes.
He was probably the only sober person in that government.
Well,
in the actual and literal sense of the word, because many of you,
that government,
many of them were not indulging
politically. Politically, that was the most sober government this country has ever had thus far, and I shudder when the next will be. We can't really wait for this lot to go so that we're able to have a possibility of a stable government.
Let me tell you why.
But you are working together with the
let me tell you.
Yes,
UPC is working closely with the current law. So
there is a UPC
position
faction
well.
which is in the alliance with NRA.
There is no UPC faction in NRA. There are individuals of UPC leaning in NRA.
I'm coming back to Semogere.
We shall get there.
The reason why
conclude on this one.
the reason why I'm a little bit sentimental about this, because my old man made the decision, and he had to go internally in exile.
Did he grant bail?
Yes, he granted bail.
And had to
He
escape?
interpreted
The
May. But
as discretion. As discretion.
Yes, as discretion.
And he ran into exile?
He released, no, he didn't go internally.
Went underground?
We know Uganda fairly well. We know the marshes, we know the forests,
hide.
we know where to hide. We know where to hide in Uganda.
Now that
But
you have
anyway,
the region.
So you granted bail and went to the bush?
let me tell you, you remember Tony Masaba? You remember Tony Masaba?
Yes.
You remember Tony Masaba?
Tell us
What
about
the
it.
judge in Masaka
I was young. Tell us.
You remember Tony Masaba?
No, tell us.
He's the one who protected us.
Okay, but Demian,
Tony Masaba
this?
was an intelligence operative with them.
Do you know what
But anyway,
this means?
what I'm bringing to your attention, Semogere, but some of these fundamental human rights that we take so much for granted, Semogere.
Even
Except Semogere committed near treason by joining the Tito Kellers to overthrow an elected government, and Semogere committed near treason by joining these NRA guys and give it legitimacy in 1986. So that are so those are some of the issues. And he sat like a dummy for 10 years and woke up in 1995 that he was actually pushing an equipment that was too impossible for him constitutional.
But there's a quick
Said about
rejoinder.
Oh yeah, he's my elder.
There's a quick rejoinder I wanted to make.
I hosted.
In
So
19
what
so
goes
he
around
released
comes
him.
around, so.
He released him in 1985 on bail. Guess what happens? He released, I think it was around maybe the 10th of July. Guess what happens on the 27th of July? Coup d'etat. 2 weeks later,
Their thing.
not their thing. 2 weeks later, the man he was released on bail became Minister for Internal Affairs.
But it was their thing, and those are some of the things that were ongoing, which we do not know.
I
You know,
So-
there were already grounds for these things.
Yeah.
Ochieno, Sarah's your submission.
Yeah, I was saying that, you know what Joe and Edgar are saying is a manifestation of a cycle of controversy of our independence journey.
And repeats.
And to me, what is painful as an advocate of constitutionalism,
An activist.
whatever
Yeah,
it is,
whichever.
on constitutionalism. To me, what is painful is that in these 59 years, we are doing the same things, repeating the same mistakes. Because this now, for example, the debate on bail and where a judicial officer gives bail and then goes underground. Because if the massacre judge had given bail again to the 2 MPs, maybe she would also have gone underground. And that's why she referred the file for bail to the principal judge. And that is happening for the second time, because even in 2005, the file for Besige's bail was referred to Justice Ogola as the principal judge. But
There's
away
a
from
background
that,
to it.
No, you will give your background. I'm stating the fact. I'm not discussing background. So I'm stating the fact that it's the second time a file for bail for politicians in this country under President Museveni's regime is being referred to a principal judge. 2005, 2021. But the controversy on bail before, we had the detention without trial, 1968 Emergency Powers Act. We had the controversy where Semogere now may grant bail or may not, happened in 1985. And today we are discussing the same things. So are we moving? Because, you know, you can move. But even moving in reverse gear, you are moving.
No.
So are we moving forward?
You know, running on a treadmill. Running on a treadmill. A lot of progress being made.
The rat race.
It's a treadmill.
It's a treadmill. You're putting in a lot of effort,
Monicah, maybe
but no progress.
Just to invite in Monicah. Monicah, given that the constitution and the political contestations have characterized Uganda's independence to date, yeah, what is Uganda's actual problem? Can this be addressed? Because it's what we are actually discussing now.
Yes. First of all, for me, just to come from the ongoing discussion, I think for me, when we come to this discussion, or when we are talking about 59 years now of independence, and we invite the population to celebrate the 59 years,
What is there to
what
celebrate?
is meaningful to them? What is there to celebrate? And what should they look forward to in terms of a future? Because this particular day is very significant in the life of a people and a country. But tomorrow, the other day, we shall be celebrating Independence Day. The communication, the narrative that is going to go out. I had the benefit of reading the public statement by the minister.
And the theme.
Yes, and the theme, of course,
For this,
for these
Yes.
celebrations. And I think it's around a future.
Victory.
No, well, reflecting.
It must
and
be a
then also,
mouthful.
Yes, of course.
must be
It's a
about-
paragraph.
they are talking about
Yeah.
building a
The
future,
theme is the
securing your
paragraph.
future.
We have never been good at PR.
Securing the slums I
Securing
left in
our future as a
I
country.
left the
As a country,
slum.
blah, 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 blah.
So I think you should read the statement. This time they were very careful with the narrative they are putting across, and they were very honest with in terms of the synopsis that they are having and what the challenges are in terms of the current. And I think they point out poverty. So for me, the discussion should be around what we need to give to the public. What is the hope that we are giving them? What should be done going forward in the 1959 years and then the next decades, or what we are going to go to?
I had an accidental meeting. We were in a banking hall, and I met the Honourable James Michael Akena. And
My dear brother,
Yeah,
Yes.
he's an MP, right?
He's my dear
Yes.
brother. Yeah.
And your brother.
Yeah.
I mean, you basically, you drank from the same political cup.
Absolutely.
Yes, we did.
I know, but when Dr. Bote passed on, as a person who was paying personal respects with my old man, we went to the private wake at the late Akbar Adokonye Kyon's residence in Naguru. I had that advantage, and he's the one who received us. In his, I don't know why he likes blue, yet ideally his party should be red. He was in the
Blue, black.
I know
So is that kind of living the
Blue is
legacy?
cool.
And we had an opportunity to discuss, and I said,
Is he living the legacy?
when your dad was in charge, we had the rallying call was the three diseases we're fighting. Rather, ignorance, disease,
Poverty and disease.
poverty.
We are still fighting the same.
Okay, so my point is the conversation. There are two things I always want to hear from these discussants, these elite persons that are always on this discussion table. And so the first item was on, you know, Tabaro, when you come in, you make us lose our thought line, and we have to rethink backwards. The point I was asked
And
is,
he's
where
enjoying
is
it.
the problem? He's enjoying it.
Where
Where
is
is
people
the
in reverse?
in reverse gear and the
Millennials
treadmill?
disrupt, so I've learned their
But
ways.
I am millennial.
No, I've learned their ways.
Oh, you are disrupting.
No, I'm reinventing myself. I'm
Like I attempted to be
that's an opinion, but I'm reinventing myself.
Like you said in 2031, someone will be on the
Please,
ballot
don't take
paper
me
saying,
there. Those rules of your debate in
Okay.
other places, I think I'm not yet comfortable with them.
Good.
But the point I was trying to make are two issues. One, we should be discussing the future.
yes.
Because when we're in this space here, yes, and that happens in all platforms, national debate, political conversations, you take us back a lot into the past. And the narrative is always about blaming the other government against, pitting the other government against the other. But the solutions for taking Uganda forward and the actual problems we've solved as leaders do not stand out. And that's where your question comes in. Where is the problem? For me, when I was training to grow, become a leader, I know, and I'm very sure that
You trained to become a leader?
Of course, you have to train.
Would
Are you a natural leader, born the way you are?
Yeah,
You don't.
Prefect all through school, head boy, GRC.
You are very lucky, because some of us, we had to go through certain stages. And as a woman, you have to go through so much to be able to be on the same discussion table with you,
Really?
Tabaro, right now.
Really?
Yes.
I was not brought up that way. I see you as an equal in every sense of the word.
Well, you see, but the structures around us do not allow us to enjoy that
I
space
have daughters for children.
that much. So my issue is that the challenges of Africa and Uganda they have not been addressed because of the leadership challenge that we still have. Notwithstanding how many have come and gone, well, we can still have that discussion and continue with it. In Uganda here, we still have a leadership challenge. And that's why we still talk about 59 years down the road, and what we offer to the citizens is not even, very clear and understood by them. We still have the dropout rates, we still have literacy, we still have poverty. The statement of the minister now is saying the challenge that we have to address. Of course, we've come a long way, 59 years, there's this and the other. But the current challenge is about poverty, addressing poverty. Have we just known that poverty is here in Uganda?
In yoga.
59 years.
I think
So
the question is not so much about leadership. It's
The
about
question
governance.
is about leadership.
Leadership is
Because
a
the
subset of
leaders
governance.
enforce the
I
governance
agree with that.
principles.
Yes,
Yes.
in agreement, but I want to ask you a simple question. I haven't,
Because-
and for the benefit of the viewers, I haven't read the statement in full. I saw the theme, which is like a paragraph. But a quick question, and which might seem like not of substantial effect, but because of the way we misconstrue our history. Does the statement say start from 86 or 1962? Just for information. Yes.
It starts from 1985,
86.
around there.
86, when we came.
Yes, when we
Typical.
when we
The
came.
Typical
fundamental
NRA.
problem.
Yeah, typical
So
NRA.
we miss out the other contributions from other governments and other systems that we had. What are the challenges? The learning that Joseph talks about. The learning should be very important. Then we locate, yes, and you've given us very good history as a scholar in that area. We should be able to learn the pitfalls we have gone through as a country, but pick lessons from that. And that's where my government here now fails me, And when I try, or the others, like Sarah is talking about, you try to raise these issues, you are seen as an enemy from within.
A terrorist.
And you know you are talking about social justice issues, the roads that you are riding on and their potholes, all of us, accountability issues, issues of social indicators to the people, because that is what is most important. What are the aspirations of Ugandans? How are we fulfilling them? That is the real meaning of independence in a country like Uganda, in a season, a millennium season, and you know, in these times of a country that has enjoyed this much of independence. We shouldn't be talking about 1962, the challenges which existed then, and up to today we still deal with them. It frustrates anyone in that conversation
that we face now and the past is that there are some unresolved issues from the independence period. And I've said it before when appearing with Sarah, we are yet to achieve a national consensus.
That's correct. That's correct.
And there's no way we can reach a national consensus if we don't dialogue. Now, the space for dialogue is being suppressed.
Isn't that a leadership question?
It's a governance issue, not just
no,
leadership.
Actually, and that's why I concur with Monica. That is actually a leadership question. And leadership in the broader sense beyond even personalities, but also even leadership ideas, a collective, a thinking, a process, a consensus of sorts. Those of us on this panel agree that, you know what, this is the issue, and we're going to provide an enabling environment in which the national narrative takes this route. That's sort of in the context of the leadership. And if that Monica is our spokesperson, or Edgar is the lead legal or practical physical advisor, whatever the case.
Diplomat.
So really, by and large, is that. And then finally, in the event that we brought in the national question with an individual, in this case, Comrade Museveni, with the privilege of an imposition for 35 years and given all the chances to be able to lead, as we were saying at the beginning, and simply fails to create the consensus, the space, the organization, the capacity.
No, I want to bring it, yes.
That sort of is really what Monica is talking about. And you know, it really, really is very much about that. And the future of our country worries me, because we might begin to get so disintegrated that a leadership that emerges becomes an idea which is so un-Ugandan, so completely contrary to the founding values of the Republic of Uganda, that this country gets lost, you know, in its own mess. And that's a problem.
Sarah, you had...
Yeah, I want, you know, in agreement with the Monica and the Joe, I really want to request that we go further. Of course, they have identified the problem. It's a leadership, governance question. But what is at the center of this? You know, when President Museveni came, he said the problem of Africa was leaders, and Uganda. The problem of Africa in general, and Ugandan specific was leaders who
overstayed power.
Without election.
He has amended after.
Without election.
No. You'll have your time. He later amended, but the statement in Ethiopia, Addis Ababa, was leaders overstaying power. Even the book that was authored first did not have an amendment. Edition. This amendment was after lifting of term limits and age limit. So that is not the original statement. It's a distortion for matters of convenience, because he has done what he came condemning. So having said that, so let's look at this power and what is at the center of this power. You have selfishness, extreme selfishness of leaders. You have ethnicity and nepotism.
The characteristic element, yes.
In extreme measures also. To the extent that recently a senior colleague in the security forces first was seeing on TV talking about human rights violations and did not even think that I could be Mnyankore. Yes, so he said,
but the accent sells you.
All along I'm Mnyankore. But how can a Mnyankore speak against this regime, yet it is yours?
Serious?
Yes. So, and that is the common mentality really everywhere. these are Banyankore, they are in Chintu, like they call it.
And you in
This
Chintu.
is their thing.
And you in
You
Chintu.
will ask it.
I don't know, I'm wondering. I'm not a Mnyankore, so I can't know.
But you Westerners are anyway.
you
Leave us alone.
But that's also
Some of
wrong.
that can be
Yeah,
Southern
because not every Westerner is enjoying
Then
the...
Bantu.
Let's have Sarah.
Next
Yes.
to nepotism and the tribalism, you have corruption. Excessive
that's too much.
corruption. So then corruption makes it risky. Even if a leader wanted, and I'm not saying they want, then you start, worrying for your own safety outside
But
power.
Sarah-
And we have seen these examples. For example, in our neighbor, Kenya had to introduce a golden parachute to enable Moi to retire peacefully.
Wow.
And I'm glad they did,
What golden
because they were
parachute?
able, I know,
golden
because they were, read about it if you don't know. Go and read about the golden parachute in Kenya. So
He returned the power to where he belonged, the House of Mumbi.
then,
He had only borrowed it. He was.
you see, it gave Kenya breathing space.
At least, yeah.
To be able to develop, move
Move
even
forward.
if they had that post-electoral violence in 2007, you would have your time, Edgar, control yourself. So,
She was interrupting us when we were talking about.
This later continues.
Please.
Sorry, but I wanted to find
so
out.
yes,
They're
then
enjoying
I'm
our
coming. So,
Confessing
this
this.
impunity creates insecurity outside power.
Yeah.
When excessive impunity swings in, then you need power
To protect you.
protect yourself and your colleagues and family.
Post your
Yes,
government.
Sarah, we are discussing, Edgar, Sarah, we are discussing, first of all, 26 years of the Constitution.
Yes.
And of course, we know that the Constitution should provide for mechanisms, institutional mechanisms, to safeguard against some of these.
Yes.
Why are we failing? And why is the Constitution failing to provide this?
And I have the answers to that.
No, before Sarah
that's
comes in,
you.
Damian, just a quick one. You know,
no, Tabaro, you had an exception
I'll
on
come to it,
governance
I'll come to
issues.
it.
What is your
Yes, and
solution?
I'm coming to it. I'm coming to it.
Yeah.
I would like us to. You bring Kenya. Kenya has a very different set of dynamics. There's a country that were ranked as peers, being the Republic of Ghana. Very similar history. Very similar history. Yes, very much.
But
Coups and
very
whatever.
progressive.
Yeah, I'm coming to that. We were peers at one time. And it's registered in your mind that it's progressive and we probably not progressed as much. And that is what I want to situate when I say
Are we ahead of Ghana?
they are much ahead of us.
They're much ahead of us.
Much ahead of us.
Of course.
Thank you.
But in 1986, when Jerry Rawlings was in charge, and this federal revolution that took over in Uganda, we ranked similar.
Yeah.
Similar poverty rates, access to power, similar.
Their masters were the same,
Well, I mean,
same laboratory.
Washington, Westminster axis, the ones who were controlling it. And we introduced a structured adjustment, same time. 91, Ghana was a construction site, just like Uganda was beginning to whatever. So the question is, at what point did we drop the ball? Because Ghana has had transition, how many times? Power coming from one party to another party.
I think from General Rings, they on the fourth
About
president.
4.
But even transfer power to different parties.
Yes.
Can I just have 30 seconds actually to make one? That's a very important point, actually. It actually helps very much because you raised that, contextualizes Monica's observation about leadership and whatever.
That's why that's the tangent I want to go.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Because actually I happen to have the privileged information that after the second post-Rawlings, there was a stalemate. And
49.3%.
fellow citizens watch.
Yes,
Do you know what happened? Do you know what happened? Top guys in security met, and I happen to have met one person of those guys, met the two individuals. Ugandans watch. 2 individuals.
You appeared on Jazeera over that
Yes,
matter.
but,
You were on Al
even
Jazeera.
now, even in the last election, the ruling party lost to the rest for
That's correct.
Yeah.
But Sarah,
what
your point is this,
Yeah.
which I'm making, that look, somebody had to tell these guys that between the two of you guys, between the two of you guys, what is fact and what's not fact. We are watching. We are not allowing Ghana
To descend.
go back.
To descend.
You decide
And
tonight.
that- you see,
So the military held it.
Intelligence,
Intelligence.
neither here nor there, but somebody waking up silly
But
two heads,
but the
silly
same
two
applies
heads
to Kenya.
who think they
How
own
did the
this
military
republic.
behave in the post-election violence?
No, actually,
The military said no. we are fast watching your confusion.
Which ones?
They did not, it did not take sides.
Which one?
Kenya.
They waited
In
so
the post-election, they waited so long, but they did not take sides. That's the point I'm making.
I don't want to submit on Kenya because
Okay.
I know so much about it.
Okay, yes.
And the intelligence
okay,
report
let me
generated by
conclude
General
with the,
Gichanga.
yes, let me
Yes,
conclude with the
yes.
top information I know. In Tanzania, when they made the first report about impunity and excessive corruption against the then Prime Minister under Chikwete,
Edward Lowassa.
yes, Chikwete was daring on implementing the decisions and firing his Prime Minister. They met the called him and said, look,
My dear.
Richard
unless,
scandal.
yes,
The energy
unless
scandal.
you fire us and the people implicated, we are unable to guarantee your security.
Wow.
And Chikwete had
In
to
which
do.
case it happens
Yes.
like that, Monica, it happens like that once. It happens like that. Some silly guys who think they're masters, deputies to Jesus, realize that they can be disposed of. And now make a quick point. And then it happens twice. It becomes a culture.
A culture.
Yes, but
That's
how
to bring
Have
you.
you
does our
permitted
other
me?
behave?
That's
Have
our
you
culture we
permitted
have.
me?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Have you permitted
I'm sorry.
me? That was very good. It was a very good
Yes,
interjection.
very good.
It was a very good interjection.
Go on.
You know, most of my adult life I've done.
Regional spying.
Diplomacy in the region.
Diplomacy. And I know some of these things.
Okay.
Tabaro, it sounds like a name.
When is the next
Diplomacy.
flight? When is the next flight?
But there are things I can't say on air. You know,
Okay.
it's a crime
Yes.
to
To
do
reveal.
espionage.
Oh, yeah.
To do espionage. It's a crime in Uganda. So please
If we
don't.
have received that information in official capacity, yes.
My dear. By the time you explain yourself, bail will have been denied. And the provisions in the constitution will have changed in your discovery. You remember the story of a tiger running?
So, do not allow the
A tiger
temptation.
running in the bush and
Eh.
so why are you running? They offered to ask the tiger, why are you running? That they are chasing after wolves. They said, but you're not a wolf. Why? Said my friend, by the time you prove that you're not a wolf, you got 10 years in prison. So the elephant also joins in the fight. So I don't want to. But the point I was making when I say the biggest challenge we have is not really leadership. It's with the citizenry. Yes. And I'll build my point. You know, and
Edgar is the son of a revolutionary, so carry on. So,
true, and I am a revolutionary. I pride myself as one.
I'm not quite sure, but
I have no
I
apologies
give
to
you
make.
to that, but carry on.
Yeah, because you've seen me. I'm a lawyer. I defend.
The revolutionary.
No, I defend class interests.
Class.
Yeah, and that's a contradiction.
Why did you
Yes.
refuse to
Wow.
represent me? Because I didn't have enough money.
No, you're a dangerous.
Your class is not.
Joseph,
Yes.
I've represented.
We are diverting.
I've represented.
Let's not divert.
Okay.
I've represented the political dissidents, and it has brought me trouble.
Wow.
Yes,
So
yes.
you
I'm not a
opted to
political
represent the
dissident.
class.
You were in exile at one time.
No, I
You
was
are
in
now
exile.
representing
So
the
was
class.
Museveni and Janet.
Wow.
Well, they were dissidents, not so.
They were dissidents. I've
Let's
never been a
focus
dissident.
But the reason that's why I brought Ghana is really to put things in context. Why has Ghana been able to move past some of these basic things that we are debating? And I would like to attribute it to a strong, civically competent population.
There's an element of that. Yes.
Civic competence. It boils down to civic competence. Yes. If you by the even the Tanzanians you're mentioning of this world, the Kenyans, they have a much more civically competent populace. Take it from me. If you're not civically competent, you'll never hold your leaders accountable.
Fair
Simple
enough.
and clear.
And credit Sarah. Sarah's actually addressed this many times, including actually drawing reference to Kenya, sometimes in our lamentations, isn't it? That actually, if only some of our so-called elite class, whatever the case, these land friends of us in town and this so-called,
You're talking about
Edgar, to inform you,
You can't rely on the
Edgar,
allies.
to inform you maybe, the purpose of why civic space is here is to
build
really give
confidence.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
bridge the gaps.
And when we're having conversations like
should
this,
give
we need to
them
be
the right
informative
information.
conversations
Yeah.
that would want then
And
allow
see,
our
that is
citizens
my worry.
to
We stop
speak.
at conversational actions.
No,
What
my
do you
dear,
want
Kenya,
the
you
more
want them-
what do you
information
want them
you
to
give,
do?
the more people really get civically
there's a
competent.
lot of latitude
and
under the
informed.
Constitution. Listen to me.
Oh, we are
listen to
listening.
me.
We are
Listen to me.
You see how you're struggling to be listened to?
No,
You should also give the same to other-
Let me tell you, I'm making a very profound statement.
Okay.
And the other one-
A very profound statement that may not be made by any other person in this country. Eh?
And it is yours. You are entitled to it.
We're
It's
talking
only-
about corruption. We know the people who divert government funds. We know the people who embezzle government funds. The law permits us.
I'm beginning to
have-
like you. I'm beginning to like you.
The law permits us to commence private prosecutions.
Yeah.
And DPP takes
So tell
No, come on. Let's not even get
Which
there. How many of us are
you need to
ordinary
test it,
Ugandan
yeah.
can
You need
do
to test
that.
Yeah, you need to test
And
it.
I'll
That's
give
what I'm
you
going to say.
examples.
Yes.
Eh?
Yes.
You remember Save Our Soccer movement of Dennis Mbidi?
Yes.
They actually attempted a cleanup of the football governance in the country by private prosecutions. And things improved.
Yes.
Things improved.
But are you
Okay.
expecting
But
an
there are two
ordinary
questions.
Ugandan?
You see,
There are
before
two
even we
that.
test it.
No, Monica, there
now,
are two
do
questions.
you expect the what?
Do we have
Ordinary
evidence?
citizen,
Two?
not the elite.
That's
we
what
have
I'm talking.
evidence?
Civic
That
competence
is why
is lacking.
civic at
Civic
all kind of
competence
levels.
is lacking.
That's
Do we
right.
have the evidence?
These countries you're talking about, Ghana, Kenya, Tanzania, have a much more developed civic population.
Okay.
Okay.
Edgar, the
And the Kenya
last
came from
question
behind
on
us,
that.
actually.
And by the way, they did sit back and go to
Do we have enough evidence for litigation?
My God.
And who will give you that information?
You can even carry out a lifestyle audit. These things are permitted.
Yes.
You're a civil servant at the rank of commissioner, and you're building malls?
But Edgar, those very people are protected by the,
You see,
the gun.
we are finding solutions, and she's putting problems.
Okay.
You're
well-
putting but, Anita. That's what I was rejecting in Tororo. But.
Yeah, because if I wake up one day, Amoding, I'm going to do private prosecution on some powerful minister that is having
And you see,
offshore accounts.
and this is the illusion.
They are protected.
This is the illusion
They
we
are
have in Uganda.
protected by
Let me tell you,
certain
there's
mafia.
only one person who's powerful in Uganda. The rest, it's just superficial.
Yes.
Just by stroke of a pen,
Yes.
Kutesa appeared in a dock.
Yes. You
Don't
know,
be deceived.
Muhwezi appeared in a
Don't
dock.
be deceived. And that
But do you
came
know-
as a result of pressure from the populace.
Okay.
Yes.
But do you know the change he caused? The issue of bail lapsing upon committal was outlawed just to benefit
With
Kutesa.
one person or two.
Yes. So that Kutesa's bail does not
So
lapse.
do you
But he
as
appeared
a
in the
private
dock, right?
citizen?
Yes, of course
I
he
am
did.
bringing
You think that was not
I'm
proper?
bringing something else,
really?
which may be generic. I think Edgar's got a point.
He
How
has,
we do
of
it,
course,
how we do
yes,
it,
yeah.
is the issue, and I think it's a very important point for civic space
Yes.
that we really need to take it. How
He
we do
has
it.
a very profound point.
Yeah.
Very, very.
Oh, she now agrees with me. Proper.
No, I agree with the active citizen. It's what we work on at Center for Constitutional Government.
You know,
The how.
But we are a drop in the ocean.
Uh-huh.
It's why this Civic Space TV was established.
civic space,
But it's a drop
mobilize,
in the
organize.
ocean.
Yeah.
How do we build a critical mass
Yes.
to make sure that these efforts are not a drop in the ocean?
Exactly. How do you build a critical mass?
Yes.
Now, that is the question I put to you.
Would you like to propose one or
Can
two?
it be individual?
Let me tell you, I took Kaka to court.
So you're proposing private prosecution?
I took him to court.
One of them
can
is that.
give you
One of them is that.
authorities.
Yes.
I took him to court. I challenged Kaihura.
You
when he
use
was
every
IGP.
legal means available
We
to say
are-
nope.
We have about 8 cases in court in
Yeah,
public
yeah, but I
interest
don't-
litigation to defend the Constitution.
Give me instructions
Okay,
and you
now
see what I will
we-
do for
Thank
you.
you.
Okay, let me.
I know we
Yeah.
have the instruction
Yeah.
on NGO bureau because we are taking it to court.
Okay,
Okay, that's
Edgar,
good.
Edgar, as we conclude, because our time is fast spent, we need now to draw up to the way forward. What are the way forward for stability and development for Uganda?
He has already
Work towards a
submitted on
national
it.
consensus. We can only achieve consensus if there is a genuine dialogue across the political divide. Whether it's Bobby Wine, President Museveni, who are the other, I only remember.
Kizza Besigye.
Edgar, you're so terrible.
I mean, the others are
No,
withered
we've been
away.
talking for 2 hours.
No, the other protagonists are
Bambi.
withered from my mind. I don't know of two extremes,
Yes.
Museveni and
Two extremes.
Yeah,
in
and,
a-
Seriously.
and you
No,
see,
okay, no comment.
And you
Okay.
see, yeah, exactly. The dynamics that are setting in, the dynamics that are blending in Uganda, they are only giving space to extremists.
The extremism, yeah.
So the moderate voices are going to be
Left out.
silenced. And the more it happens that way, we are really digging into an abyss of hopelessness. Violence will beget more violence. We have a very young population. We have a population that, you know, the jobs are not enough to go around. We have an increasingly urbanized population. And an urbanizing population is extremely dangerous. Now, whether we want it or not, this Bijambia you are seeing, I don't know whether you're reading, you know, they've now invaded. They started somewhere in the peripheries, what we think are the peripheries. But I know less than 10 lawyers who have been attacked. 10 lawyers, one lost his ear.
Ooh.
Very senior lawyer.
This is Bijambia?
Yes, this is Bijambia. I have a relation who was attacked as well.
At their homes?
Yes, and when you look at this, it's really an offshoot of the increasing
economic gap.
No, gap, yeah. The gap, the economic gap. Low-income groups, low-income groups, and even the little that we're earning, you know, with COVID that set in, we chase these guys from the streets, hawkers, and they don't have an alternative, so they turn to crime.
Including ushers, karaoke dancers in bars.
And then we have an increasingly incompetent criminal justice system.
Private school teachers, I get petitions.
We are digging in a deep hole over
as you wind up, because I'm going to give each one of you 3 minutes, then we conclude.
So you want me to wind
The
up?
conclusion.
I'll give my minutes to Joseph Ochieno.
Okay,
Thank
Sarah.
Not Sarah.
Your 3 minutes. you interrupted Sarah. I thought you would really be kind.
He has given her extra 3 minutes.
That was a payback.
Yeah.
Draw, fine.
For consensus and
In
reconciliation.
my conclusion, independence is not about NRM. I know that the official celebrations will be about NRM and when we came in 1986. No. Independence is about Uganda. We have 59 years of independence. NRM has just taken, of course, the largest share of 36 years, but we have the 22 years of other actors in between. What does it mean to an ordinary citizen? How independent are you? I will use Kwame Nkrumah's slogan for independence in Africa. Without economic independence, political independence is a myth. But even with political independence, how independent is your party? How free are you to associate, to assemble, to petition? We do not have those simple and common sense civil liberties in this country. So, as a citizenry, Uganda belongs to us. The greatness of any nation is seen in how we treat our minority and most vulnerable people. How do we treat vulnerable people? I will use the test of COVID. The state earmarked the most of the most vulnerable people and decided to give them 100,000 shillings to survive the lockdown. Majority did not receive the money. But that was very little money, given that we have 8.3 million people living in poverty today, as per UBOS statistics. But the president is seen dishing out money to people living in Dubai, working in Dubai, who are very well off, people working in the US, Cheyo people, diaspora people give remittances for the biggest number and support their families here in Uganda. They are not vulnerable. What are our priorities? How come we are concerned dishing money to the well-to-do people instead of helping the most vulnerable? Do we then qualify to say we are independent and we can qualify to call ourselves a great nation? No. Please get up and we can make a better country together.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Monica?
That's a perfect way to end it. For me, of course, every time there is a social challenge, a societal problem, a society challenge, it goes back to who is the leader somewhere. And I'm not looking at it from just the politicians or the ones that are in charge of government, but ultimately the biggest burden to provide solutions lies with the leaders at various levels, but particularly with the person who wields more power, has more authority, and of course these are the three arms of government, and ultimately the political, head in most of the, the conversation. And therefore, the solution going forward, 59 years of independence, yes, we have done an analysis of where we have been, where we were, and what we would like to see seems to be a little bit a challenge. And Tabaro raises the issue of building consensus, the positioning of the citizens, and how we can improve their situation. The challenge is with the leadership, and would like to see more action being taken. And with this particular bite, I want to appeal to the elites. Because these ones seem to be very comfortable. I'm very impressed with Mr. Tabaro's discussion. And being an elite at that level, I think he has come to the positioning of understanding that particular issue, that what should we be able to do? And he's one of those, I think, who enjoys these spaces, like myself, like Sarah and others who are watching the elite of Uganda. We have abandoned this discussion and civic engagement and participation because we are comfortable with the few benefits we get from our positions and our jobs. And we have left the critical issues to be discussed by the people that we should be supporting who do not enjoy the space we have like now. And so, of course, those that want to take advantage of this position will always ride on that and continue to make the mistakes that they are making. And therefore, the elites, you may be comfortable wherever you are, you don't want to talk. It's the people here taking actions at individual level. But the situation, I was very pleased with the situation, the way it played out during COVID and how people came out from their comfort zone after realizing that, hey, kumbe these
Nobody's
things,
safe.
no one is safe. When you have a poor service delivery in the country, you are affected. You go to Mulago, you cannot get oxygen. You are an elite who can afford to pay.
Oxygen.
You get fake oxygen. You deplete your savings trying to save your life. Now our children are all home. It's just maybe 1% of Uganda's population which can afford to take their children to school on private tutorage and, homeschooling. So these things affect us more than we think. And therefore, the civic participation of Uganda should be seeing more of the elites, the employed, those who have an income to take home, rather than for us to wait for the ordinary citizens who we are supposed to help to determine the kind of government we want, the kind of governance we want, the kind of systems we want. Is it possible to have a change? Is it possible to dream of that future then if we do not want to engage as the middle class and the elites? And so the challenge is with us. The way we want to see Uganda after 20 years will depend on you, me, Sarah, Edgar, and Joe here, and others who are watching, who are privileged actually to watch this program today. But we don't seem to have that courage. And it will take people with courage. Leadership, wherever you are, is envisioned with courage. If you are unable to take a courageous step, you don't qualify to be a leader in any way, because leaders challenge difficult situations and provide solutions for those difficult situations in the season that they find themselves as leaders.
Thank you very much, Monicah. That's profound. Joseph?
Yes, it's extremely sad because we're talking, actually, it's 59 years. It's really 60 years this weekend.
Yeah.
And the reason is part of what Edgar suggested, extremely important, really. The question about national consensus. We discussed the question of identity. Going forward, national consensus is an imperative. And, excuse me, for some reason, I just want to suggest, it's just COVID, it's nothing complicated. I just want to suggest that we may, as Ugandans, stop looking at Museveni.
Yeah.
Because Museveni is not going to shock us. I don't think the guy has got capacity to wake up with a national consensus miracle tomorrow. We just need to help him to get tired enough to let go. Because he's not going to do it, number one. Number two, even if he did anyway, he's not part of the future. Museveni is part of the problem of the past. He may see in whatever way he sees. So the future of this country, like Monicah nearly said it harshly to me, belongs to the generation below me and possibly most of us in this panel. And so therefore, it's our jobs, those of us here, very critically really, to help create space for national consensus. But beyond that, address very fundamentally, very quickly, the national question David likes to address, the national questions and actually the identity question, which then includes the nationality questions, which we've been wrapping around the 1963, the mathematics of leading to 1961 independence discussion, and the resolution of the Uganda question that we needed to be a free and independent country 1 year later. So 60 years this weekend, Ugandans of diverse background, at leadership in the broader sense level, gathered and agreed that we needed to be an independent country. Whatever their mistakes, whatever they omitted, they sought to do that. I suggest that actually in starting at 1962, with the mandate of Ugandans, the first independence government, thankfully led by UPC, attempted its best to deliver for that. But I want to say something very quickly, because I know it's a conclusion. A beautiful girlfriend of mine, possible future wife, and she wasn't, came from, it's very deliberate, by the way, came as a head of a major international agency working in the Dadaab refugee camp, the largest refugee camp in Kenya at the time in the world, to visit me in my bush. But of course, I had no bush, just an exile, streets of London, you know. Because I was not really punching anybody like this bunch, you know, in London. So what I did was to deliberately take her for coffee in Canary Wharf, the new city. And I told her, talking elites, I told her, she's a doctor, I told her that, look, you know, here is where we were. Hardly 15 years ago, this was derelict, poisoned land. The British government pulled it, turned it round, and created this major, miraculous city, you know? And this is where we are, with trains running up and down and all these kind of funny things. And what are the best you can do? You know, the Musevenis visited this place, they know what I'm talking about, you know? Those guys do it. Those guys do it for their peoples, for their youth. They specifically picked East London because it was the most degenerated part of London, you know? So where is these young Ugandans from Kamwokye and the rural parts of Kasoli in Tororo who have to stand up and demand that a leadership emerges that is able to give them a possibility of the future? So these things are actually possible. So if we build a national consensus, if we seek to resolve the identity question, you know, or seek to do what Milton Obote told Professor Ingham, Ingham told me that, look, you know, Kenneth, you'll return to England, but for us, we'll remain here in Uganda. So whether we like it or not, for you guys to go, we will need to learn to live together. So Ugandans, whether we like it or not, we need to learn to live together. How do we do it? I think then the third issue is, you're talking 26 years of the Constitution, which I reject because political parties were taken out of it. I'm making it a deliberate conclusion because I'm saying the 26 years, part of the problem about the constitutionalism, you know, was because, you know, it was one in which you think you have a national constitution, you know, but you imprison the majority political view, which was DP and UPC, you know. So that happened, and so for that reason, no wonder the quagmire in which we are. Going forward, whatever constitutional thought comes on the national table must be about Uganda and the future about Uganda. Not putting term limits thinking you're going to block Bote and then touch us up with you. Not putting age limits because you're going to block Bote and catch us up with you. Not, you know, incarcerating a section of northern Uganda, you talk about stability 30 years, you know, in jail because you want to pacify the country. Whoever is helping this, at the national helm, including Mr. Museveni, because he's got an opportunity in the next few years, should be able to do so that we do it in such a manner that it's really about building for the future, as we say in Makerere. And as the NUSU, National Youth Students Organization of the days, we used to say Uganda first. We need to do it for Uganda first. I suggest it is possible. All we need to do as citizens of this country is to believe in better. And if we do so, the next 60 years may just about be a Uganda that is comparable to Ghana.
Thank you very much,
60 is
Joseph.
too long.
Thank you very much, Joseph. Okay. Thank you very much,
There's
Monicah.
what they call leapfrogging, eh? Is it leapfrogging, eh? We can
Thank you very much, Monicah. Thank you very much, Sarah, and of course, Edgar, for giving us this reflective conversation that gets back to us as viewers out there, as Ugandans, to think and critically reflect about what we need for Uganda and where we need Uganda to be. I know this conversation has provoked our minds so much, and it has provoked us to act and also join the different spaces, the governance spaces, so that we can offer ourselves for the future of not only today, for the future of for young people that will come. The generation here will not be here for so long, and of course the generation leading us today is not here tomorrow, so it is us, the young people out there, that are supposed to take up leadership. Of course, this conversation has been on our Twitter handle, the hashtag ChatShowUG, running live on YouTube, Civic Space TV. You could constantly subscribe, drop your comments on, of course, Facebook. We've been live. You also be part of these conversations, drop your comments, drop your thoughts, and we try to be part of this conversation going forward. My name has been Masesa Demiano, and may God bless Uganda.